So welcome friends, how are you all? What if Naruto eat very powerful dragon fruit and get harem with Kaguya movie? Naruto gasped for air as he lurched forward, throwing a punch out at whatever was nearby, only for it to be caught by the dark-haired man with a strange-looking tattoo on the left side of his face. Calm down, no one here is going to hurt you, the strange man said in a rather low voice, taking a deep breath. Naruto pulled his fist back and sat up in the bed, wincing as his chest hurt from the wounds he had suffered. Where am I? Naruto asked as he recalled what had happened shortly before he blacked out. He had been fighting against Kaguya and managed to activate the seal to release the tailed beasts from within her and contain her inside of a massive Chibaku Tensei. However, with the last of her strength she managed to open one last portal and pushed him through. Kakashi had tried to use his Kamui to save him, but the last thing he heard before everything went black was the sound of something breaking. You're on my ship. We were sailing when we saw a large storm rapidly forming before you fell out into the ocean. The moments later it vanished. The man explained as he didn't really know what to make of the blonde teen before him. He had assumed that the storm had been caused by him as it had been a rather cloudless day before he appeared, but when he found him he was floating on the water, something that should have been impossible if he had a devil fruit. Having looked the teen over, he could tell that he had been in a rather difficult battle if the wear and tear on his clothing was anything to go by. Judging by the headband he wore, he assumed that perhaps he had been a shinobi from the land of Wano. Well, I guess thanks for the save, Naruto said looking down at his hands. He had no idea where he was, but one thing that confused him was, how was this man not trapped in the infinite Tsukuyomi? It should have been impossible without Indra's power shielding them. My name's Uzumaki Naruto by the way, he said introducing himself. Monkey D. Dragon, the man replied in kind. Naruto looked at him with a questioning look. Yes? Dragon asked him with a raised eyebrow. I was expecting your actual name, but I guess if you want to use your moniker that's okay. The blonde shinobi replied as he understood why the man would use a fake name instead of giving a random stranger his. That is my real name, Dragon confirmed as his own eyebrow twitched slightly. No one had ever questioned if his name was real or not before, but the look on the blonde's face was almost one of someone told a lame joke. Naruto had never heard of someone with such a strange name. Sure, Anbu had codenames like Monkey and Dragon all the time, but for it to be someone's actual name was kinda bizarre, if you say so, he mumbled as he felt Kurama's chakra healing his injuries. He smiled at the feeling of his friend's chakra coursing through him. It was comforting to know that even in this strange situation, the fox was still there with him. Are you from the land of Wano? Dragon asked him, wanting to confirm his theory before he jumped to any conclusions. The confused look on Naruto's face was enough to answer Naruto's question, but what he said next had him more confused. Never heard of it. I am from Hidden Leaf Village in the Land of Fire, he replied. Dragon had heard of the Land of Fire, but he doubted that Naruto was from the place he was thinking of. Kilauea was a blistering place covered mostly in flames. Nothing lived there as far as he knew, let alone an entire village of people. I see, Dragon replied simply before hearing a growl coming from Naruto's stomach. Let me get you something to eat, he said standing up before walking out to go get some food and think on what he had learned from the blonde. That man had no chakra. Naruto, the shinobi, heard inside his head as Kurama decided that now that the man was gone, it would be a good time to talk with his Jinchuriki, and as far as I know there has never been a land of Wano anywhere in the world. I fear that in his attempt to save you, your sensei sent us to another universe. Naruto replied in a half-certain tone, hoping that Kurama would try and correct him and call his idea silly. Correct, Kurama confirmed in a heavy tone as he didn't want to believe it any more than Naruto did. I can't sense anyone we know, not even your teammates, more so. I can sense several people on board the ship and even more a few miles out. None of them have chakra, and even if they did, why aren't they trapped by the Shinju? Kurama told Naruto, who nodded his head solemnly, accepting that this was their current situation. Any way to get back? He asked his lifelong companion. Kurama didn't answer for a while before letting out a heavy sigh. No, as far as I know, there is no way back that I know of, the Kyuubi said in response to the question, dashing any hope his container had of them being able to return back home. Neither of them knew much about time-space ninjutsu, and even if they did it was impossible to replicate what landed them here to begin with. Neither had Kaguya's power or Obito's Sharingan. The door opened to reveal Dragon bringing in a plate with some steak, mashed potatoes, and some vegetables. However, looking at the blonde he could see tears starting to fall down his whiskered cheeks. Something the matter? Dragon asked as he came over and set the plate on the night table besides the blonde. Dragon, do you have a map of the world? Naruto asked, not able to raise his head. He knew the answer. He knew that the map wouldn't look anything like the world he knew, but part of him wanted to hold on to the hope that maybe he was just in some remote and unexplored region of the world. Dragon nodded his head and called for someone to bring them a map. Another man came in and handed Dragon a rolled-up piece of parchment. Here, he said, opening it up for Naruto, expecting him to point out where he was from. Naruto however felt the last of his hope draining away. This is not our world, Kurama reaffirmed upon seeing the map. Dragon's eyes widened as he witnessed Naruto's eyes turning blood red, his pupils slitted as he looked down at the map of the world. This isn't my world, he muttered as he tried to cope with the knowledge that he was not in his home world anymore and had no practical way to return. Gritting his teeth, he felt his anger bubbling up. The wood of the bed and room started to crack and splinter as his chakra radiated out angrily. Conqueror's Haki? Dragon wondered as he felt the pressure radiating from the blonde. He felt his anger weighing down on him and even affecting the area around them. The man who had handed Dragon the map seemed to be having a worse reaction compared to the revolutionary leader. Naruto, I would ask that you contain your Haki, he said, hoping to knock the blonde out of his anger. Taking another breath, Naruto calmed himself, seeing the other man nearly pissing himself. Something Naruto had said did catch his attention. This isn't my world. So many questions swirled in Dragon's head. Wondering what that could have meant, looking at the map Naruto had asked for and the reaction he had when he laid his eyes upon it, as well as the strange storm and appearance, the conclusion he came to was that Naruto wasn't from this planet. It sounds weird to even think about it, but given what some devil fruits could do, it's not so outlandish to believe. Dragon thought to himself. He had some reservations about believing the blonde, but he didn't seem to be hiding his emotions. Sorry, I guess this world isn't your own, is it? Dragon asked, getting straight to the point. A nod from the blonde was the answer he expected. Then you can stay on my ship until we reach the next island. After that, you're free to go on your own or join us in the Revolutionary Army. Dragon offered, believing that even if Naruto was an enemy spy, it would be for the best to keep a close eye on him and see if they could get information out of him. Revolutionary Army? Naruto asked. Dragon nodded his head. Right. We are a group who are fighting against the world government to free everyone from the control and corruption of the world nobles. He told the blonde, who raised an eyebrow at the terms that Dragon had used. Seeing the confused look on Naruto's face, Dragon decided to elaborate some more. Currently most of the world is under the control of the world government, who use their military branch known as the Marines to maintain their authority across the planet by offering protection from pirates. However, while the Marines claim to fight for justice, the corruption they bring often devastates the poorer islands, making them pay heavenly tribute to the world nobles, even at the cost of starvation. On top of that, the world government has experimented on the poor and defenseless for centuries. They are the evil we seek to destroy, and sold thousands into slavery. Dragon explained to the blonde shinobi, not mincing his words as he explained the cruelties of the world government, how they took advantage of the weak. Naruto didn't say anything as Dragon spoke, waiting for the man to finish before in the natural energy of the world. He could feel that it was different from what he was used to but served its purpose nonetheless. Using Kurama's ability to sense negative emotions and amplifying it with his sage mode, he extended his senses as far as he could. A scowl smeared across his face as he felt the pain and suffering of the people in this world, opening his eyes to reveal that they had changed colors from blue to orange with cross-shaped pupils. As he released his sage mode, he looked at Dragon with a frown. This world really is suffering, he said before looking at the food beside him. I'll let you know my answer after I finish my food. I need to think on some stuff, Naruto stated. Right, I'll let you rest for now, Dragon replied as he had some more things to think about as well as having to manage his ship. A few hours passed as he laid in bed, trying to come to terms with his current situation in this apparently different world. As far as he knew, he was stuck here for now. All of his precious people were back in his world, still trapped in the god tree as far as he knew. Maybe Sasuke would manage to get back and undo the jutsu, he had no way of knowing. Part of him wanted to give up, to just let it all go and wallow in his misery, in the dread of knowing that his friends and allies might be forever lost because of Kaguya's last spite against them, but he knew that all of his friends would be disappointed in him if he just gave up. Even if they were lost, they would want him to continue to carry the will of wire, to protect what was precious to him. I think we should join Dragon, Naruto said to Kurama, believing that if he was stuck here, he might as well continue to fight for a good cause, and freeing people from oppression seemed like a pretty good one to get behind. Before Kurama could reply, the ship shook as the sounds of explosions filled the air. It's the Marines. Man your stations. One of the revolutionaries yelled out as people ran through the halls to get ready for battle. Rushing up to the deck, Naruto spotted Dragon at the helm of the ship. He could see several dozen ships coming towards them, firing cannons in rapid sessions at them. What's going on, Dragon? He asked, looking at the incoming ships. At the front of one of the ships he spotted an extremely tall tanned man with curly hair that came down to his shoulders. He was wearing a white coat over what appeared to be a white vest with a blue long-sleeve shirt and white pants. Dragon looked over at Naruto. The Marines found us, and they sent an admiral after us, he told the blonde as a cannonball was shot straight at them but was caught by the blonde with his bandaged hand before throwing it off the side of the ship as he looked at the man who stood firmly at the front of the headship. He's so tall, Naruto muttered as he was reminded how short he was before he went on his 3-year training trip with Jiraiya. Dragon chuckled at how despite being confronted with one of the strongest members of the Marines, Naruto seemed to get distracted by Aokiji's height. It reminded him of how his son was according to the intel he got. However, he knew that this was a serious situation. As far as he knew, he was the only one on the ship currently able to take on an admiral without getting completely wiped out. Naruto felt a large gust of wind pick up, bellowing against the sails of the ship, causing it to quickly pick up speed. However, the curly-haired man seemed to respond to the wind by seemingly freezing the ocean, the ice rushing across the sea towards the ship to freeze it in place for them to catch up. Shit, Dragon cursed as he prepared to try and counter the incoming ice. Rasenshuriken. He heard Naruto's voice from behind him as an orb of energy with 4 spinning blades around it flew past him. He could feel the wind whipping around the jutsu as it soared by towards the encroaching ice. His eyes widened as it exploded into a massive orb of millions of microscopic blades of wind that shredded the ice, stopping it in its tracks. The wind generated by the Rasenshuriken further helped push them forward and the Marines back. Naruto breathed heavily for air as he still hadn't recovered fully from his injuries and having fought for nearly 2 days straight against godlike beings. Looking at the blonde Dragon couldn't help but smile as he felt that maybe he had found a gem in the middle of the ocean. Not bad, he said as the Marines seemed to be getting further and further away from them. You haven't seen anything yet, Naruto replied with a wide smirk as he sat down on the floor of the ship to rest. Leaning against the railing of the Wind Grandma, Naruto looked up as he sensed something flying overhead. Coming down from the sky, he saw several pieces of paper rain down from the presence above. Picking one up, he saw a picture of his face on it, his eyes showing that he was in his base 6-path sage mode. It didn't have a name registered, since the Marines didn't know his name yet, but his bounty seemed to be 100 million of the currency of this world. Congrats on your wanted poster, Dragon said as he walked up to Naruto holding his own copy of the piece of paper. 100 million berry is nothing to scoff at, the tattooed man stated as he joined Naruto against the rail. Looking out at the sea, he was sure the high bounty was like due to the fact that he had been spotted next to him. Aokiji probably assumed that Naruto was a rather high-ranking member who had stayed hidden until now. How does it feel being an enemy of the world? He asked the blonde who sighed. Not even a week here and I am already a criminal, he lamented as he looked at the picture. But if I knew that they were going to be taking a picture I would have looked cooler. He joked as he had to admit that the picture they got of him looking serious was far from the worst picture he could have gotten. How did you do it? Dragon asked, having never seen Haki do that before. Having a devil fruit would explain it. But he had found Naruto floating in the ocean unconscious. Had he been a devil fruit user he would have sunk and drowned due to the negative effects that the fruit has when in contact with seawater. So unless the blonde was about to completely uproot the entire world's basic knowledge of devil fruits, it had to have been something else. I used my chakra, Naruto replied as he held his hand out and created a Rasengan in the palm of his hand. How did Sakura explain it? It's a mixture of the body's physical and spiritual energy? I don't know if that really makes sense, Naruto stated as he didn't really know how to explain chakra to someone who wouldn't know anything about it at all. Even most civilians in his world knew about chakra and the basics of it. Interesting, Dragon said as he looked at the orb in Naruto's hand which looked similar to the core of the attack he used before to stop Kuzan's ice. Would it be possible for others to learn how to harness it? He asked the golden-haired shinobi, wondering if it was possible to teach their weaker members how to use it as well. It would help drastically increase their military might. I don't think so. People are typically born with chakra and chakra pathways. I don't sense any in you or anyone else on the ship, Naruto replied as he didn't know how he felt about possibly introducing chakra to this world after how it had gone when Hagoromo did it to the people of his world. Dragon sighed as he figured that might have been the case. If something like that could just be learned then it would have become like hockey where the strongest taught their crews how to use it. Shame, Dragon said before one of the crewmen yelled that they were nearing a place called Alabasta. Well, it seems we'll be making landfall soon. Have you made your choice yet? He asked, referring to if Naruto was going to stay with them or continue off on his own for now. I think I'll stay with you guys for a bit. After all, I guess I am already a criminal, and I don't think becoming a pirate is something my precious people would be happy to hear, he replied, knowing that if his friends and family would hear that he become a pirate of all things, they would likely be very disappointed in him. Besides, where would I go? I don't know anything about this place, so I figure staying with you guys is for the best for now, he added on as he didn't even know how to properly sail a ship. Sure, he could learn, but it seemed like every day the weather would change sporadically. Yeah, it would be a bad idea to sail on his own. Dragon smiled as he was happy to have the young blonde willing to join them. He had already shown him that he was rather powerful even when injured. And the Marines wouldn't expect to fight. Well, an alien human, glad to hear. I'll give you some berry to get some new clothing. Just be careful of pirates and bandits. Alabasta has been having some local conflicts as of late, Dragon warned as he handed Naruto a wad of berry to spend on himself. Naruto still only had his tattered clothing he wore during the war. It wasn't exactly comfortable for someone to walk around in rags. Walking through the streets, he learned that this place was called Nanohana, which served as the main port of the kingdom. He considered himself lucky that the common language here was considerably similar to the one back in his homeworld. Looking around, he spotted a shop that seemed to be selling clothing. Walking in, he decided to have a look around and buy himself something. After around half late, he walked out wearing an orange long coat that left his chest exposed with a red scarf around his neck and white pants. For shoes, he decided to keep his toeless sandals. Around his waist was his headband, so his hair could be more loose. It had cost him around half his money, but in the end it was better than the rags he had been wearing before. "How about you leave me alone?" a female voice said to a group of what looked to be intoxicated Marines. A frown appeared on his face as they seemed to be rather aggressive when it came to trying to get the women to come with them. "Come on, I am sure we can make it worth your time, miss," one of the Marines said with a lecherous grin as he looked at the rather tall woman. She wore a fur-lined white coat over a purple corset that left little to the imagination and a matching miniskirt. Her face was largely obscured by a large white and purple cowboy hat. "Or maybe we should detain you for refusing to comply with the Marines," he threatened. "I think she gave you your answer already," Naruto said, deciding not to let the Marines use their authority to take advantage of the woman. Then the group of 4 Marines looked over at the blonde with annoyed looks on their faces. The woman seemed curious as to the sudden involvement of the blonde, moving back to let him distract the Marines while she made her escape. "Hey, it's that whiskered freak from the new wanted poster. He's worth 100 million berry." One of the other Marines yelled as he recalled seeing the wanted posters that were delivered to their base on Alabasta. "Oh, name's Uzumaki Naruto, not whiskered freak," Naruto yelled as he felt insulted by being called that after all these years. Seeing one of them try to pull out their gun, he rushed forward and punched him in the face, sending him flying back. The other one tried to help his fellow Marines by punching at Naruto only for his fist to be caught and thrown into another Marines. The last one aimed his gun at Naruto but froze when he felt dread filling him. Walking up to him, Naruto grabbed the gun and yanked it out of his hands, causing the man to stumble back in fear. "Scram!" Naruto ordered as the Marines picked up their things and grabbed their unconscious member before running away. Looking back, he found that the woman had decided to get away while she could. Sighing, he decided to leave the area as well as many seemed shocked at someone attacking Marines like that. Finding a place to sit down and eat some food, Naruto decided to order some meat with rice and a mug of beer. Sighing, he leaned back and took a sip of his 5th beer. After everything he had been through, he needed something to calm his nerves. "Well, I didn't expect to find my hero here," the woman from before said, sitting down in front of him. She had seen his wanted poster around and figured that he was one of those pirates that had some morals. "Mind if I join you?" she asked coyly as she examined the blonde before her. She had caught his name before, Uzumaki Naruto. She had never heard of him, yet he had such a high bounty. "If you want," Naruto said as he averted his eyes as her cleavage was on full display for him. "Sorry I never got your name?" he asked, figuring that he might as well talk to the woman. "Miss All Sunday," she answered, giving him a kind smile. However, she quickly noticed the frown on Naruto's face. "Codename?" he asked as he felt that she was lying about her name, unlike Dragon. The woman seemed to tense when he called her out on the fake name that she had given him. "Well, Miss Sunday, if you don't want to give me your name, then so be it." He shrugged, not really caring if she wanted to give him her real name or not. However, he could feel a decent amount of darkness within her, not like Orochimaru or Madara's, but almost like him when he was younger, and anger towards others due to being wronged in the past. "Quite perspectives," she said, following her hands together, happy that he didn't seem to push the issue. Part of her wondered if he knew who she was. The Marines had been too drunk to realize that they were attempting to woo the devil child. "So what brings you to Alabasta?" she asked, wondering what he was doing here. Someone with such a high bounty typically did something to deserve it. Even her bounty wasn't that high yet, and she was considered especially dangerous to the world government. "My ship needed to resupply and I needed new clothing, so I figured I'd get off the ship and buy some stuff," he answered honestly. Dragon had told him to be extremely careful about invoking his name as he was considered an extremely dangerous criminal. Miss All Sunday hummed as she contemplated his words. Given how laid back he was and his tone, he was either a masterful liar, or he was telling the truth. "Well, thank you for helping me back there with those Marines," the woman said, still smiling at the stranger who waved it off. "It was nothing. I don't like seeing others abuse their power," the shinobi responded as he finished his beer and called for another one. "Do you live here?" he asked, wondering about the woman. Given the feeling she gave off, part of him wanted to try and help her. "You never change, do you? Always a sucker for a pretty face," Kurama said, snickering at his Jinchuriki's tendency to help women in peril, thinking back to his many missions in the past where he had to protect some princess or priestess or movie star. "Shut up, Kurama," Naruto yelled back in thought. "Only for the last few years, I got a job with a local company. she answered half-truthfully, having figured that if he had seen through her attempt to hide her real name, he might see through the rest of her lies. Whoever this was, he wasn't some random person with a reasonably high bounty. And you? Where are you from? She asked, wanting to dig for some information herself. If he was someone potentially important, it would be good to have some information on him. A sour look crossed the blonde's face. A place, very far away, he muttered, reminded that he would likely never be able to see Konoha again. Miss All Sunday couldn't help but sympathize with the blue-eyed man. Her own home was far out of her reach too. Given the pained look, she figured that something had happened to his home island that now prevented him from returning. Do you miss it? She found herself asking. Naruto chuckled as he looked out the window at the sea. Yeah, it wasn't always the best, but it was home. People took care of each other, and we all worked together to get through whatever the world threw at us. Though some people were assholes. Demon brat this, demon brat that, he said, recalling how even after everything he did, some were unable to move past his connection to the Kyuubi that had destroyed most of the village and killed many of their loved ones. The dark-haired woman froze a bit when he said demon brat, recalling her own nickname as the devil child. Demon brat? She questioned, interested in the nickname. Yeah, they thought I was some sort of monster incarnate. It took a while for people to just see me as well, me. He told her, a bit too drunk for his own good. Often parents would tell their kids not to play with me. Naruto said, thinking back to his childhood. He didn't blame them anymore. He had forgiven them, but that didn't mean that he couldn't reflect on how much it hurt back then. The woman clenched her hands on her skirt as his story seemed to hit a nerve. He's almost like me, she thought to herself as she remembered being called a freak by people back home before she got the nickname of Devil Child. The two continued to talk for the next hour or so. Miss All Sunday had found his tales from home fascinating. He had told her about some of the people that he had fought, while Naruto had decided to omit some of the more extreme examples such as Madara or Kaguya. He talked to her a bit about Zabuza and Hiku, two of the first major shinobi that he had fought. You thought he was a girl? Miss All Sunday asked with a small smirk on her face. Naruto scoffed. I still have my doubts, like seriously, his face was cuter than yours. He yelled a few beers too deep at this point. The woman rolled her eyes at the unintended compliment from the blonde who was clearly intoxicated. But, yeah, he taught me that what's most important is protecting those who are precious to you. Something that I've lived by since then, Naruto declared firmly. They sound like a great person. What happened to them? She asked but regretted it when she saw the saddened expression. I am sorry, the cowboy hat-wearing woman said. She found herself lowering her guard around him. Something about his genuineness and the warm feeling he was radiating made her feel safe around him. He also seemed to not have any idea who she was. Something that made her happy as typically people knew who she was already and plotted against her for her bounty. There you are. Dragon's voice came from the door. We need to head out. You caused quite the stir with the Marines with your stunt, he said to the blonde, a bit agitated that Naruto had attracted their attention so soon. Looking at the woman that his new ally was talking to, he couldn't help but narrow his eyes slightly. Nico Robin. You're proving yourself quite troublesome, Naruto, Dragon thought as Naruto sighed and stood up, swaying slightly before a flare of Kurama's chakra helped burn away the alcohol in his body. The woman's eyes widened as she saw the tattooed face of the world's worst criminal. Naruto walked over to Dragon's side and waved at her. Well, looks like I gotta go. See you around, Miss All Sunday. I was nice meeting you, he said before leaving with Dragon. To think you'd strike up a conversion with Nico Robin of all people, Dragon quipped as the two got back on the ship just as Marines started to pour into the port. The Wind Grandma started to sail out of the port as a wind began to pick up again. Nico Robin? Naruto questioned. That's her real name, also known as the Devil Child by the Marines, he informed his blonde companion. Devil Child, huh? The shinobi muttered to himself as it reminded him of his own nickname when he was younger. Why do they call her that? He asked Dragon, who looked out at the sea, the wind helping them outpace the Marines while keeping them away. That's quite a long story, maybe I'll tell you later, Dragon replied as he focused on getting his ship away from the Marines once again. Well, that about that does it for the first chapter. Honestly, it came very natural to me, so hopefully the next chapter will too. Anyways, as to any possible pairings, well, Nico Robin obviously lol. If it ends up as a harem, probably Nami. I'll put up a poll lol and see what people want, but I'll probably cap it at 3 or 5 at most. Anyways, please leave a review. It takes like 5 seconds and it helps me see if the story is doing well or not. Later. So where are we off to now, Dragon? Naruto asked as they sailed through the sea. While he still felt a bit seasick, he was getting more used to being at sea. It had been a few weeks since they left Alabasta and his encounter with the woman known as Nico Robin. Dragon had given him some details about her and her past, how her home had been destroyed by the Marines because they dug those nose too deep into some lost knowledge that they wanted to keep buried. It angered him that the people who were supposed to be protecting the weak were instead using their power to oppress and manipulate the story to make the people of Ohara look like monsters. From what Dragon had told him, not even civilians who weren't involved with the researcher were spared. Nico Robin had been the only survivor. Sabaody Archipelago, we got a tip that a particularly large shipment of slaves were going to be auctioned off soon. Some of them are members of the Revolutionary Army that got captured during a failed mission at a marine base. Dragon told the blonde as he wanted to save his subordinates on top of the rest of the innocents that had been captured. He knew how cruel the celestial dragons were, especially to people they knew hated them. I have little doubt that if they are sold to the world nobles, they'll be tortured for their own amusement, he almost growled out. A heavy scowl appeared on Naruto's face when he heard that. You know, the more I hear about these bastards, the more I just want to punch one in the face. He commented as everything he had been told about these people made him sick to his stomach, how they treated those under them, how they saw themselves as above humans, above the law even. As far as they were concerned, the law was made for their own benefit and didn't apply to them, and the Marines just accepted it. Dragon chuckled lightly. Careful, if you want to get an admiral called on you, punching a world noble will typically do the trick, he warned lightly. While he wouldn't mind punching a few of the world nobles himself, he knew that getting an admiral called on them wouldn't exactly be the best idea. A full-on fight with the Marines wouldn't exactly be something he wanted in the middle of an highly populated island. It was that cautiousness that prevented him from talking to Nico Robin when he found her with Naruto in Alabasta. He doubted he would have enough time to convince her to join them before the place was swarmed with Marines. They barely made it out without major conflict to begin with. A wasted opportunity, as Nico Robin would have furthered their goals greatly, but escape was his top concern. Well then, let them come, Naruto said, slamming his fist into the palm of his hand with a wide, confident smirk. He didn't know how powerful these admirals would be, but he figured that if he could fight people like Madara or Kaguya, then he doubted that these admirals would be that much stronger given what he had seen from this world so far. Admirals are no joke, Naruto. I would recommend not taking them too lightly, Dragon told his alien companion. While he doubted that Naruto had shown him his true power, and from what he had already seen, the blonde was exceptionally powerful, he didn't want to take the chance of him underestimating the three admirals and getting in over his head. He didn't even know if Naruto had a way to hit them, since he assumed that hockey wasn't a thing where he came from. Well anyways, what's the plan? Naruto asked as he saw the bubbles of the island appearing in the distance and growing ever closer. He had been growing a bit anxious from being on a ship for so long, and he couldn't wait to stretch his legs on land. We're going to try and break into the auction house and liberate those being held there. A team will try to sneak in through the back entrance, but we'll need a distraction to lure the guards and Marines away from there. Our contact on the island said that a Shishibukai will be guarding the world nobles attending. He said, knowing that whoever would take the job of distracting those who would try to stop them would likely have their work cut out for them. Fighting one of the warlords wasn't an easy feat for most people. He figured that he would probably have to do it himself given that his other commanders were out on their own missions for now. I'll do it, Naruto said casually, feeling that he might as well just go strong with these Shichibukai. He was never one to hide, and that Admiral had already seen him use the Rasenshuriken. In reality, he wanted to figure out where he stood in this world power-wise. Most of the people on the Wind Grandma didn't really pose much of a challenge for him, and Dragon was too busy for a serious spar against him. Dragon didn't seem too convinced as to letting Naruto go up against someone like a member of the 7 warlords of the sea. Of course he knew who would be the Shichibukai that would be there already. His spy had told him that Bartholomew Kuma would be the one with the world nobles. It so happened that Kuma was also his spy, so he would have to put up a convincing fight against whoever went up against him or risk blowing his cover. Are you certain? Members of the Shichibukai have been known to be able to take on entire fleets on their own. Dragon asked to make sure Naruto was certain he wanted this. Normally Dragon would outright refuse someone so new volunteering to perform such a dangerous job, but Naruto had proven himself the strongest among his subordinates. However, the smirk on the blonde's face filled with such confidence swayed him ever so slightly. He could see a strange golden energy starting to rise from the shinobi that made his skin tingle. Trust me, Dragon, I can more than handle myself. After all, I fought a goddess before. How bad can one person be? He claimed, much to the amusement of all the crew members who overheard him. A goddess, he says. Dragon, I think the new guy has gone loony. One of the men laughed out loud. They all knew that the whiskered blonde was exceptionally strong, but to claim to have fought a goddess was absurd. I'll show you, Naruto growled, holding his fist up, ready to clobber whoever doubted him. Enough, the commander of the Revolutionary Army said, ending any discourse on his ship. Naruto, if you feel that you can hold your own, then I'll put my faith in you, he told the blonde, silently hoping that he wasn't making a mistake. Sabaody Archipelago having docked their ship in one of the many ports, Naruto followed behind Dragon through the several areas of the tree-made island. While Naruto was still wearing the outfit he bought in Alabasta, Dragon had pulled his cloak's hood over his head. Apparently, despite the marine base on the island has a rather prosperous dark side. So where are we going? Naruto asked the older man who weaved around people, his face covered by the shadow of his hood. Naruto didn't know exactly where they were going, but Dragon had insisted that they head to some bar before they did anything else on the false island. We're going to see a few people of interest, no need to think too much about it, Dragon replied, not seeing a need to go more into it as he was certain that Naruto, being from another world, wouldn't know who the people they were going to talk to were. We're here, the dark-haired man said as they arrived at a building with a green ball for a roof. Shaki's rip-off bar? He asked with a flat look on his face. Dragon chuckled as he pushed the doors open and entered the bar, Naruto following closely behind him. Looking around, there were some rather strong-looking pirates around drinking. Behind the counter was a woman with dark hair in a bob cut smoking a cigarette. Walking closer to the bar counter, Dragon sat down. Anything you'd recommend? Dragon asked the woman, who looked at the man with a questioning look. Not every day someone like you comes around, she said before her eyes flickered to Naruto, who sat next to Dragon and gave her a warm smile. Must have something to do with the slaves that just got shipped in, the woman commented, placing 2 beers down for them, and the new revolutionary, Uzumaki Naruto, she said, having seen the updated posters being delivered around the island a few days ago. How do you know my name? Naruto asked, wide eyes by the fact that she knew his name already. Given you have a wanted poster, it's not that hard to guess, she replied in a teasing tone as an older-looking man with long white hair and beard walked out from the back. The man looked at the two and sat down next to Dragon. To get a bounty of 100 million berry right off the bat, you must have done something pretty bad, the man commented as he looked at the blonde, who chuckled and scratched the back of his head. Not really, I just stopped. What was his name? Aokoji was it? He tried to freeze our ship, Naruto asked, looking at Dragon, who facepalmed at the fact that the shinobi had forgotten the name of one of the 3 admirals. Aokiji, Dragon corrected. The older man laughed out, as the woman handed him a beer as well. So young and facing the admirals? The new generations really are something else, right Shaki? He asked the woman with a wide smile on his face, as he couldn't help but respect any youngster who had the balls to get between an admiral and his target. Granted, he figured that Dragon would have been able to handle it. So how can we help you too? The man asked. We were hoping that you and Shikayaku would have some information about the auction house, Rayleigh, Dragon replied to the former right hand of Gold D. Roger. While Kuma had been able to get them a date and time, as to when the slaves would be on the island, he hadn't been able to give them more details due to having needed to be around the world nobles attending the auction. Shaki took a drag of her cigarette as she seemed to contemplate the request from the revolutionary leader. From what I heard, there is a backroom entrance that's typically only guarded by a few Don Quixote pirates that Doflamingo left on the island last time he was here to keep an eye on the establishment. It's a straight shot towards there. They hold the slaves. You just need to find a way to remove the explosive collars, she told the 2 members of the Revolutionary Army. And of course there is Kuma, who has been spotted on the island with a group of world nobles. Not exactly an easy opponent for the average person, Rayleigh added as he looked at Naruto. Anything I should know about him? The blonde asked, wondering what he would be walking into. He of course wanted to make sure that he didn't underestimate his opponent too much. Dragon had told him about many of the devil fruits that existed. He didn't want to run the risk of running into something that could put him in a bad situation if he didn't handle it properly. Bartholomew Kuma, he ate the Niku no Mi. In essence, it allows him to repel just about anything he touches. This includes air, people, and long-ranged attacks. He's even able to push out the pain and fatigue in people and push it into another. He's also been modified by the world government using cybernetics, making him a cyborg, Rayleigh answered, figuring that the blonde was going to be the one to take on Kuma. While he was still green, his starting bounty spoke for itself. He had to have done something that really grabbed some attention. He typically attacks by pushing the air in ranged attacks, and can condense a large amount into a bomb of sort. He however needs to be able to touch whatever he's repelling with his hands, so they're tie up. He can't use them to block or attack, he mentioned, figuring that the young boy could use all the help he could get against one of the warlords. Dragon, if you wouldn't mind, I'd like to talk to you in the back, Rayleigh said, motioning for the tattooed man to follow. Dragon nodded and looked at Naruto. Stay here until I return, he ordered, wanting to make sure that the blonde didn't try to leave the bar and get into trouble. Seeing Naruto nod his head, he followed after the older man, who closed the door behind them. Dragon, are you sure that kid can handle this? I am not typically one to get involved with your business, but I've never heard of him before the wanted posters dropped. Does he even know how to use hockey? The former hand of the Pirate King asked, worried that Naruto would be getting in over his head against someone like Kuma. As far as I know, he doesn't know how to use hockey, but I have seen him repel an attack from an admiral while heavily injured. Now that he's fully up and healthy, I need to know where he stands in terms of strength if he's going to continue being part of my army, and if Kuma is too much of an opponent. Then I'll step in myself and let the others handle the slaves. Dragon replied, believing in Naruto after what he witnessed on the ship when Aokiji caught up to them. The sheer devastation of his Rasenshuriken and his claims of having fought against a goddess needed further investigation. You're using a Shichibukai as a test for your new recruit? Rayleigh asked, not sure if he heard right before chuckling. Well, there is probably a good reason. Where did you find this kid anyways? He fell from the sky, Dragon replied, smirking as he left the back rooms only to find that Naruto had beaten up several men with swords. What happened? A few guests got a bit rowdy when they got their bills, but he managed to clean them up, Shaki replied with a smirk as the blonde shinobi had taken care of the pirates with ease. She had been rather surprised with how easily Naruto had been able to deal with the 10 pirates. It looked like he hadn't even tried despite them having pretty sizable bounties. Well, good job, Rayleigh said, looking at the people who attacked his wife. None of them were dead. Instead, they all had been knocked out without taking too much damage. From the looks of it, they had each been knocked out with just a hit or two. Dragon had mentioned that he couldn't use Haki, meaning he beat them all with his natural strength as far as he knew. Dragon rubbed the bridge of his nose. We better leave before the Marines arrive here, he said, pulling his hood down and putting the money down for the drinks they had, but Shaki pushed it back towards him. Consider it a thanks for Whiskers taking care of those punks, she said, having taken a liking to Naruto during the time that Dragon and Rayleigh. Flashback, watching the two men walk to the back to talk about who knew what. Shaki looked at the blonde who drained his beer with less intensity than she was used to compared to others. So why did you join the Revolutionary Army? Shaki asked the blonde while gave her a warm smile. Frankly, it's mainly because Dragon took care of me when I was at my lowest. When he found me, I frankly had nothing. I saw that he had a point when it came to this world's corruption, Naruto said, knowing what he felt when he accessed his power to sense negative emotions. Dragon had felt like someone he could trust while the world itself felt horrible due to the corruption of the world government. Shaki took another drag of her cig as she listened to Naruto. Just understand that once you directly go against the world nobles by helping Dragon with this, there won't be any going back for you, especially if you end up hurting one of them, she warned, knowing that those people never let anything go. Once you got on their bad side, you were going to stay there until you died. If the world nobles and Marines are as bad as I've heard and seen, then I don't care if they hate me, he responded, feeling that the government that managed the majority of the world was extremely flawed. He didn't think that everyone in the Marines were bad, but they were complicit in the atrocities they committed. Dragon had told him about what happened back on Ohara when he asked about Nico Robin. To wipe out everyone, even those who weren't involved in the crimes committed that got the Buster Call ordered, that was insane. I see. Well, I don't particularly disagree. I've seen a lot of shitty things in my life. What do you seek to accomplish? She asked him, wondering if he was just another of Dragon's lackeys or if he had his own goals in mind. Naruto's smile turned somber at the question, almost as if he was remembering something fondly from his past. I want to bring peace to the world, so no one has to die a needless death, where everyone can live in harmony, he told her honestly as he thought back to his time with Jiraiya before his death at the hands of Nagato. Live in harmony, huh? Sounds nice, but given how people are, I say that might just be impossible, she said as the drunken men looked at their bills in shock and began to get riled up by just how much they were being charged by the owner. Naruto smirked. I've been known to make the impossible possible, ya know, he told her, confident that he would one day be able to do it. He didn't know how, but he had seen back in his homeworld how people could all band together. If it could be done once, it could be done again, he was certain of it. Hey bish. Was with these pieces? He slurred out, clearly drunk beyond being able to talk and walk normally as he stumbled against the counter, his bill in hand showing an extraordinarily high total. That's your bill, so pay up, Shaki insisted as she wasn't about to lower the prices for these scumbags. Fuck off, the man yelled as he pulled his sword out but had his face slammed into the counter by Naruto. Captain. The crew yelled as their leader was knocked out by the blonde man who stood up and cracked his knuckles, the man sliding off the counter and onto the floor. The rest was over quickly. Despite being vastly outnumbered, Naruto managed to get out completely unscathed from the altercation. Flashback end. It was nothing, Naruto replied with a wide smile as Dragon motioned for him to follow as he took the money back and went for the exit. Given how much the woman charged for her services normally, he wouldn't look a gift horse in the mouth. See you two later, the blonde shinobi called out as he walked after the olderman. Rayleigh smiled as he watched the two leave. It's rare for you to take such a liking to someone so quickly, he said to her as he leaned back against the bar counter. Shaki smiled as she looked at the blonde walking alongside Dragon, or maybe Dragon was walking alongside him. I have a feeling he will help change the world one day, she told her husband. There was just something about him that made her want to trust him, the way he spoke with such conviction and certainty in his beliefs. He said he wants to bring peace to the world, Shaki said with a chuckle. What a dream. People have achieved the impossible, the older man replied, recalling his past alongside Gold D. Roger. Wind Grandma Dragon and his crew were going over the plan one last time before they begun their operation to free their friends and the rest of the slaves from the auction house. Naruto will start by causing a conflict to bait out Bartholomew Kuma from inside, the tattooed man said looking at the blonde who was leaning against a wall. Naruto, I cannot stress it enough that you do not kill him if it gets to that point. Try and incapacitate him as best you can, but killing is completely out of the question, he stressed, knowing that shinobi from Wano typically went for the kill. Naruto claimed not to be from there, but he figured they might have some similarities. While he might be posing as their enemy, that was mainly for show. Kuma was one of his most trusted comrades who had helped him on countless missions. He was currently risking everything by getting so close to the world government and he couldn't risk blowing his cover. It was why he would try and push Naruto away if he could make it seem realistic. If not, then Dragon would step in and save the blonde teen. Killing isn't really my style, Naruto replied, having avoided killing many people throughout his career as a shinobi. Sure, there were times where he had no other choice, but typically he tried to keep his opponents alive. Good. Then a small team of us will infiltrate the auction house and make our way to the cells where they're holding the slaves. Luckily we know how to safely remove the slave collars without setting them off, Dragon said as they had someone who knew how to undo the collars. Naruto stopped listening halfway as he decided to talk with Kurama. Really getting into this, huh? Kurama asked as he didn't expect his partner to go so headlong into this whole revolutionary deal. Not like I have many other choices. I am kinda already a criminal according to the people who run this place. From what I've seen, our options are to stay here and try to help people, become pirates and rob people, or join the Marines and scam people, or explore and hope we end up doing anything. But our best chance of bringing peace to this world is with Dragon, Naruto said, having thought about what he could do if he decided to leave the Revolutionary Army. His choices were kinda limited. Fair points, Kurama replied as he could see where Naruto was coming from. I guess it would be good for us to know how we compare to these Shichibukai if we're going to try and help this world. If we find ourselves lacking, then we'll likely need to focus more on training, the Kyuubi stated as he knew that they wouldn't get that far if they were defeated fairly easily. Dragon had mentioned something about the Yonko, which seemed to be almost like the cage of pirates. They would most likely be opponents they would have to face at some point in the future. I am sure we can take him. I refuse to let our dream die, Naruto replied as he was confident that if Dragon had been willing to let him fight, then he expected him to be able to at the very least survive against this Kuma person. After all, he would be a piss-poor distraction if he died instantly. How are you going to go about it? Will you use my chakra? The Titanic Fox asked the blonde who contemplated how far he would go against Kuma. I think I'll start off with Sage Mode. Given what that Aokiji guy did when he attacked our ship, I don't think going in without at least that might bite us in the ass. Naruto told Kurama as he knew that being punched while in Sage Mode was a very different from being punched in his base form. A punch that would knock him out normally would only knock him back while in Sage Mode. Dismissed, Dragon said as he finished going over the plan with the crew of the ship. Walking out of the room, Naruto walked to the room he had been given on board the Wind Grandma. Getting into bed, he looked up at the ceiling and steeled himself knowing that tomorrow he'd have his first major fight in this world. Naruto took a deep breath as he stood on the roof of a building overlooking the auction house. He could see people starting to enter it, some people wearing strange suits with bubbles around their heads. So those are them, I guess Dragon was right. They feel so superior that they refuse to breathe the same air as everyone else, Naruto thought to himself as he looked over at the man who was following behind them. His eyebrow twitched once again at just how tall the man was. He had finally reached a height where he was taller than most of his friends, and now here he was in a world where half the people were massive. So that's Kuma, huh? Like everyone else, he lacks any chakra, Kurama said as he sensed that despite being so large and supposedly powerful, Bartholomew Kuma didn't have any chakra in him. This made it hard to gauge just how strong these people were, since ordinarily those with a lot of chakra tended to also be very powerful. Naruto, do you read me? They heard Dragon's voice coming through the watch they had been given that had a Den Mushi inside. Apparently this world used snails for long-range communication. Strange, but whatever worked. Bringing the snail closer to his face, he cautiously replied, I hear you, Dragon, he said to the snail, which he assumed would send the message to Dragon's own who would speak it in his voice. Whenever you're ready, we're in position now, the revolutionary leader told him, giving him the clear to attack. Right, the blonde said as he began to pull in nature energy from the surroundings, orange markings appearing around his eyes and his eyes shifting to resemble a toad's with amber irises. With his Sage Mode active, he created 2 more clones to leave behind and gather energy while he fought. Let's do this, Naruto said to himself before vanishing in a burst of speed. Slave auction house, I wonder what kind of slaves they'll have today, one of the men with a bubble around his head said cheerfully as he was looking forward to buying a new toy for his son. He heard that they had some special products today that they had just gotten in, like the vast majority of celestial dragons. He didn't see anyone who lived outside of Marijois as nothing more than slaves and tools for his pleasure.
Maybe we can acquire a mermaid. We need one for our pond after the last one died. A worthless waste of money, the woman beside him said, angry that the mermaid they had bought to keep as a pet had died after their kids decided to play with it. Couldn't handle a few cuts. She scoffed as she felt that for the price they paid, the creature should have been able to handle a few cuts. Kuma didn't say anything as he stood behind the two silently seething at what he was hearing. However, he knew that had to pretend to be loyal to the world government for now. As they were going to enter the building, he suddenly turned around and brought his hand up, repelling whoever had attacked them. Get inside, he said firmly as he got a good look at who Dragon had sent to fight against him. He had never seen the teen in front of him, spiky blonde hair and whisker marks on his cheeks. Then was his eyes. Kuma noted that they looked like those of a toad, a zone fruit user.
Naruto slid to a stop as he looked at his fist. He figured that was Kuma's power to repel anything that hit the palms of his hands. So you're the Shichibukai Bartholomew Kuma, huh? Naruto said, standing back up and rolling his shoulders. Up close he could really see just how massive this man was, standing at over 22 feet tall.
Uzumaki Naruto, a member of the Revolutionary Army, Kuma said in a cold voice, putting his Bible away. He didn't want to risk it getting damaged in a fight against someone he knew nothing about. The only thing he heard about him was that he was able to stop Admiral Aokiji's attack, something which was impressive on its own. Why are you here?
To kick your ass, he replied before rocketing forward towards the man, cracking the ground behind him. Kuma narrowed his eyes as his cyborgetics kicked in to keep track of the incoming blonde. Ordinarily he would have used his fruit to push his opponent farther away, but he needed for this fight to go on long enough so Dragon could finish his mission. As Naruto neared him, he swung his hand at him to swat him away before his fist could connect. When he had blocked his previous punch, had sensed two things coming in contact with his palm. He couldn't tell what the other thing was. His sensors hadn't picked up anything. He hadn't seen anything either with his observation haki. He didn't want to find out what that was, but he figured it was part of Naruto's devil fruit. The slap connected with Naruto, but upon contact the blonde teen was replaced with what looked to be a log that got knocked away instead. What? Kuma thought before feeling the wind shifting above him. He barely jumped out of the way when Naruto slammed down from the sky holding a ball of blue energy in his hand. Never in his life had Kuma seen such an attack, and that just raised more questions. How did he substitute himself with a log? What was that ball in his hand? Dragon. Who is this kid? Kuma asked in his head as he thrusted his palm at Naruto, sending a paw-shaped bubble of condensed air at the blonde who used the force of the attack to blow himself out of the way of his pad ho. You're pretty quick for someone so big, Naruto commented with a smirk on his face as he was starting to get a sense for how this guy fought. His power had uses both in up-close and in ranged combat. Summoning 6 kunai from the seals on his wrist, he threw them all at Kuma, spreading them out. Sasuke, if I ever see you again, you're a genius for this. Kuma swung his arm, pushing the air away in front of him to knock the blades away, but they exploded when the air hit them, creating a massive smokescreen of black smoke. He ducked as a kick cut through the smoke, blowing it away with the force it had behind it. Kuma turned and slammed his palm into Naruto's abdomen, pawing him straight back through a building only for the ground under him to break and the blonde erupting out, slamming his fist into his jaw in a powerful uppercut. Even with his enhancements, the force of the blow was enough to lift him up off the ground and into the air. A copy of the blonde came down doing a spinning heel drop towards his chest. Kuma brought his hand up and blocked the kick with his pod hand, but only blew away only smoke that took the place of Naruto. Landing on his feet, he rubbed his chin as he didn't expect the uppercut to be so heavy. Looking back at Naruto, he noticed that there were 2 now in front of him. He's pretty sturdy, the Naruto clone said as he felt just how hard the mon's chin was when he punched it. You sure we don't need Kurama's chakra? He asked, figuring that they could probably wrap things up much faster if they borrowed the fox's chakra to fight. Nah, we can take our time, the original one said since Dragon hadn't given them the signal that everyone was out. He didn't want to mess up his first major mission after all. Multiple abilities? Kuma questioned as he tried to wrap his head around how someone could use so many unconnected powers. It was unheard of. One explanation was haki, but he had never heard of haki making clones. Part of him was happy that someone so strange and powerful had joined the Revolutionary Army instead of the Marines. However, part of him was irritated that he wasn't given a bit of information about just who he was going to be going up against. You've never fought someone like me, Naruto replied as the 2 rushed towards Kuma, who got into a stance to counter the 2, slamming his hand into the ground. He used his power to cause a massive shockwave to blow back everything around him. The 2 Naruto saw this in time to reach by jumping back, out of range of the wave. Senpo. Futon Daitopa. The clone called out as he ran through the hand signs for the jutsu before exhaling a massive gale out of his mouth towards Kuma, enhancing the normally basic wind-style jutsu with the senjutsu chakra within him. Senpo. Kaden Gokakyu no Jutsu. The real blonde yelled, breathing out a massive fireball that seared towards the Shichibukai. As the two jutsu met, the wind amplified the flames, causing the fire to rapidly expand and grow in power. Kuma held his hands up towards the incoming inferno and began to compress the air around it, trapping the fireball in a massive paw-shaped bubble that started to shrink into Kuma's hand. The fireball inside followed suit as it condensed with the air until Kuma held a bright orange paw bubble in his hands. The flames contained within. Yurususu Shaku, Kuma said as he pushed the bubble away from himself and towards the two blondes. Naruto's eyes widened as Kuma condensed his entire attack along with the air around it into an attack before throwing it back at him. His clone rushed into action and got in the way of the bubble. As it hit the clone, the air and flames inside rapidly decompressed, resulting in a massive explosion that blew away several buildings and sprayed fire across the area.
Senpo. Doden Doryuheki, Naruto said as he slammed his hand down on the ground. A large wall of earth rose up in front of him to protect him from the Yurususu Shaku. His sage mode faded as he used the last of its power to reinforce the wall so it could withstand the combined force for the Kumo's attack and his own combined jutsu. Popping one of the two clones he left back to gather natural energy, his sage mode returned to him as the wall crumbled.
You underestimated him. Had that attack hit you, it could have done some real damage, Kurama chastised as he felt that if Naruto had thought things through more, he would have realized that Kuma could realistically just push back his jutsu. Had Naruto's own attack landed against himself, it would have likely caused a bit more damage than either wanted to admit. Luckily the clone had sacrificed itself to help muffle the blast. I wanted to see if there was a time gap between his pushes like Nagato had. But it seems he can go straight from one to another. Naruto responded, figuring that as long as anything touched Kuma's hands, he could push them back and even condense things with them like he did to his jutsu. Crossing his fingers he created two more clones of himself at his sides as Kuma rushed towards him, thrusting his hand towards the middle blonde only for the two clones to intercept, each grabbing one of his arms and janking them back while the original launched forwards and slammed his fist into Kuma's stomach, sending him flying back. Slamming his feet into the ground, Kuma planted himself to stop his flight. Looking up he saw the three blondes rushing at him, attempting to flank him from both sides while one ran straight towards him. Raising his arms up, he began to rapidly thrust them at the shinobi. Unleashing a barrage of pressurized air bubbles, the three Narutos smirked as they each threw down a red ball that exploded in red smoke. Kuma's attack repeatedly pierced through smoke, leaving holes until the smoke had been completely blown away, but the Narutos had vanished as well. Kuma looked around the area, making sure to keep in mind the area under him as Naruto had already shown that he could attack from underground as well. The blonde was proving himself increasingly more tedious to fight against. He had yet to use that attack that blew away Aokiji's ice as well.
From behind, Kuma thought as his sensors picked up a sudden movement from behind him. Turning around he saw Naruto throwing a giant shuriken at him. Raising his hand he prepared to use kuni against the blade and knock it away. However, as his devil fruit pushed away the large weapon, a second one came right after, hiding in its shadow that transformed into Naruto holding a Rasengan in each hand.
His eyes widened as he quickly tried to swing his other hand at him, but a golden claw of flame-like energy came out from one of the ruined buildings and pulled his arm back. Senpo. Rasenshuriken. The Naruto before him yelled as he slammed the two spheres into his stomach. Blood came bursting from his mouth as the attack tore apart his shirt, pushing directly into his skin. Wind whipped around them as he felt the orbs drilling into him before they exploded, sending him spiraling away into a nearby shop. The golden arm retreated to a Naruto cloaked in golden orange energy, his hair lightly spiked up to resemble horns, joining the two clones. Naruto looked at where Kuma landed with a hard look. Kurama's chakra radiated off him as he waited to see if Kuma would get up or not. He needed something to catch Kuma off guard in order for his Rasenshuriken to land, and he doubted that he'd expect his extended chakra arm. His body tensed as he saw a large red paw bubble burst out of the dust screen and zoom towards Naruto at incredible speeds. Naruto quickly moved out of the way of the paw but was met with a frenzy of light beams that came out from Kuma's mouth like a machine gun. Explosions rang about as the beams struck out at random, destroying the two clones and managing to hit the cloaked Naruto with sheer numbers. Kuma limped out of the ruined building, his shirt in tatters and with two large circular wounds on his stomach where Naruto had hit him. Blood dripped from his chin as he stood tall. Despite having pushed out the pain he felt from the Rasenshuriken, the damage he suffered remained and he could tell that a few of his organs had been ruptured. Had he been unable to push out the pain he felt, he likely would be unable to move now. "You're a tough bastard," Naruto said as he stood back up with a smirk. Despite having been hit a few times, he seemed relatively unharmed thanks to Kurama's chakra cloaking him. "But you're out of your weight class," he said as several chakra arms came out of his back, each one with a large Rasengan in hand. Kuma stood his ground as he prepared to fight against the monster dragon had sent him. However, as Kuma took another step forwards, he fell down as his legs gave out. "You stupid pirate. You could have killed us. The celestial dragon yelled as he stepped out of the auction house that had been hit by a stray beam from Kuma. The man walked towards Kuma and aimed his gun at the mon's head. If you can't beat one measly rebel, then you're as good as dead. The man yelled as he went to shoot the injured Kuma in the head. However, before he could pull the trigger, he felt his arm snap back, the sounds of bones breaking filling the air as Naruto crossed the distance in a second and slapped the gun away. The force behind such a simple act had been enough to nearly tear off the mon's arm. How about you shut up, Naruto said, his eyes burning into the egotistical man as he bellowed in pain. How dare you? How dare you touch a god? The man yelled in fury and agony as he held his arm. A god? Naruto asked as he felt annoyed by the man. I have faced plenty of people who claim to be gods, people who could blow away entire cities in seconds, people who could drop meteors on a whim, people who could warp reality with their power alone. The glowing blonde stated as he recalled everyone he fought who had called themselves gods. Compared to them, you're nothing, Naruto said, having enough of the man. Die. Trash like you have no use but as slaves. The man yelled as he grabbed the gun from the floor with his good arm and shot at Naruto only for the bullet to drop down from his cheek. How? He stuttered as his seastone bullet did nothing against the man. It should have killed any devil fruit user without fail. The man kept trying to shoot Naruto, but all of his bullets fell to the ground, flattened. Naruto looked down at the man as he pulled the gun out of his hands and crushed it in his palm. The man paled as he saw his only weapon destroyed and his bodyguard defeated. Now scram, Naruto growled as the world noble decided that he would rather not fight against someone who took down a Shichibukai and instead wait for an admiral to arrive and take care of that scum for him. As he ran back to the auction house, the smell of piss and shit wafted over them as it was clear that the man had lost control of his bowels. I made him shit himself. He deserved it, Kurama stated as he felt that the man should have died for what he did. The man felt foul. How many lives had he ruined? How many people had he killed? Likely countless, and unlike many of the people they faced in their home reality, he did it all selfishly, not seeking world peace or to right a wrong, but rather to just show that he was above others. Above all, Kurama hated people who forced their authority on others, having been sealed away as a weapon time and time again, seen as a source of power for humans to tame. Kurama almost felt a personal fury against these celestial dragons. Naruto sighed as he looked at Kuma who laid motionless beside him. Naruto, we're all set. Dragon's voice came through the snail in his watch. Just in time, Naruto said as he turned to leave only to come face to face with several marines who were shaking in their boots as they saw that not only had the glowing man taken out one of the Shichibukai, but he assaulted a world noble. Many of them felt that it was useless to face the man, but refused to run away as proud marines. Uzumaki Naruto. You are under arrest for acts against the world government. Surrender and you'll be allowed to live. For now, the man who seemed to be in charge of the marine squad declared, but wasn't able to promise that Naruto would live for long since he attacked a celestial dragon. Sorry, but I have to go now, Naruto said before vanishing in a flash of speed, rushing away from the marines and towards the Wind Grandma much to their surprise. Naruto, what the hell did you do? Dragon's voice yelled through the snail as marines started to flood throughout the island. Get here ASAP. We need to leave before an admiral shows up. The leader of the revolution commanded, wanting to deal with an admiral at the moment. If he did, he'd likely have to go all out against them to make sure that his crew could get out of their range safely. Just leave. I'll catch up to you. Naruto yelled as bullets started to fly around him. His eyes narrowed as a wave of smoke swept towards him, forcing him to flip back. The smoke gathered into a man with gray hair smoking 2 cigars at once. From the outfit he was wearing, he seemed like a higher-ranked marine. Behind him a pink-haired woman smoking a cigarette jumped into the roof to join him and the smoke man. Stay safe Naruto, Dragon said, acknowledging that Naruto was willing to let them leave without him in order to keep them safe. So who are you two? Naruto asked as he looked between the man and the woman. From their outfits, it was clear that they were marines, but of a higher rank than the grunts. It's Commanders Smoker and Hina. The troops below yelled out joy as the two arrived to face him. You're under arrest, Smoker said roughly, smoke escaping from his mouth, or maybe he was doing that on purpose with his devil fruit. He didn't really know or care. However, he didn't particularly feel like dealing with them at the moment. Look, my business here isn't with the two of you or the marines, but if you get in my way, I'll have to push you out, Naruto told them as he was ready to fight against the two commanders. He saw no reason to power down from his Nine Tails chakra mode just yet. From what he had just seen, the gray-haired man seemed to have eaten a Logia devil fruit, supposedly the strongest kind of devil fruit. It became our business when you assaulted a celestial dragon, Smoker said, scowling at the glowing blonde who just sighed knowing that he would likely be unable to just walk away from the conflict. Well, try your best, Naruto said as the two marines jumped into action, Hina rushing towards him with her arm extended as if attempting to clothesline him while Smoker extended his arms towards him. bellowing smoke at him to ensnare the rebel. Too slow, the shinobi said as he moved out of the way of Hina, spinning around her and kicking her in the back. His eyes widened as her body bent around his leg, wrapping it in iron. The smoke moved around Hina as if it were alive and wrapped around Naruto. Got you, Smoker grunted before he saw a smirk forming on Naruto's face. The commander's eyes widened as his smoke started to twist and swirl around Naruto like a gray storm. Pain shot through his arms from the smoke, like something was grinding against them. Haki? He asked as he knew that one of the few ways to hit a Logia user besides their elemental weakness was through Haki. Raising his hand, Naruto showed that his Rasengan had been the source of the distortion in the smoke, forcing it to move around due to the wind it was whipping up. Haki? That's the thing Dragon said could be used to hurt Logia's right, Kurama? Naruto asked as he dispersed his Rasengan, the burst of air blowing away Smoker's smoke. Flexing his leg, he shattered the iron that Hina had locked around it with ease. I don't sense anything different about you, Kurama replied as he didn't know why Naruto had been able to hit the normally untouchable Smoke Man. Dragon had discussed getting Naruto a Seastone sword in order to fight against Logias, but getting one was harder than just wanting. Perhaps his chakra was interacting weirdly with their powers. Or maybe it was his senjutsu? Smoker retracted his smoke back to his physical form, showing that his arms looked like they had been rubbed against the Rasengan. The hell? He infused Haki into his devil fruit? Smoker questioned as his arms hurt to move from the lacerations all over his skin. He broke Hina's cage so easily. Hina lamented as her iron had been too weak to hold the blonde for even a second. She could tell that they were completely outclassed by the revolutionary. He had beaten Kuma, and he had shown them that even with their devil fruits, they weren't strong enough to face him in battle. They had no chance against him. Damn it, Smoker growled as he hated feeling so weak against a criminal. He would admit that he underestimated Naruto. Someone who could beat a Shichibukai wasn't a weakling. They had hoped that he'd be exhausted from fighting Kuma, but it seemed that he was still up and ready to go. Below, the lower-ranked Marines were starting to panic as one of their commanders had been severely injured and the other seemed disheartened. Naruto looked at the two before turning towards the ocean where the Wind Grandma was sailing. Like I said, my business today wasn't with you, he said as he leapt off the building towards the docks. He knew that an admiral would be on his way soon and he didn't exactly want to test his luck today. Hina, we have to keep him busy until Admiral Akainu arrives, Smoker said as his body started to turn to smoke again. However, before they could move, they sensed a powerful presence washing over them. As Naruto looked back over his shoulders with blood-red eyes, they could see the massive silhouette of a long-eared fox with 9 tails swinging wildly behind it. The pressure was crushing. They could see flashes of instances of them dying against him, different ways in which he could kill them without breaking a sweat. By the time that feeling of dread faded, Naruto was gone. Hina dropped to her knees and vomited, her cigarette extinguished by her puke. You didn't have to do that, Kurama, Naruto said to the fox within him as they reached the pier. They would have kept on coming if I hadn't. At least now we can go without any other interferences, Kurama replied as he admitted that he had used a bit more killing intent than intended. But those two were commanders from what the grunts had said. He figured that they'd be stronger than that. Running off the docks, he landed on the water and began to run towards the Wind Grandma, much to the shock of everyone watching. It was rare that a man covered in flames came running around. It was unheard of that they would go running in the ocean. Reaching the ship, he ran up the side of it and landed on the deck, much to the shock of the revolutionaries on board. Dragon walked over to the blonde, intrigued by his flaming form. As far as he knew, the mere Noemi had already been eaten, so he assumed that this was one of Naruto's many otherworldly powers. He was rather irate that Naruto had attacked a world noble, but in the end what was done, but he also defended Kuma. You were reckless, Dragon commented as he kept an eye on Naruto's form before it seemed to fade away. But you got the job done, he admitted, having seen that his newest recruit had managed to defeat Kuma in battle, something that he didn't really expect in reality. He felt bad for his longtime friend. It was clear that the finishing move Naruto used had done a rather large amount of internal damage to him. Even after pushing out his pain and fatigue, the injuries had been too much to keep going. He would have to ask about that new form he showed off later in private. So far no one knew that Naruto was from another universe aside from himself and a few of his top-ranking officers. The panic it would cause would likely be unimaginable if it was found out that there existed other worlds. I couldn't let that asshole shoot Kuma. Even if I was fighting against him, he didn't deserve that, Naruto told the dark-haired man who nodded in understanding. It was around that time that posters started to drop down from the sky. Looking at the poster, Naruto saw a picture of a dark-haired man with freckles wearing an orange hat and no shirt. Portgas D. Ace, wanted dead or alive. The blonde read as he looked over the poster. He did feel a small hit to his pride when he saw that his bounty was actually higher than his 100 million berry bounty. Damn, wonder what he did, he asked as Dragon grabbed one for himself and looked at it with an expressionless look. Dragon hummed as he didn't seem to know how to feel about the poster. Someone you know? Naruto asked. Seeing that Dragon didn't look particularly pleased or upset, the man was normally hard to read at face value due to his generally stoic appearance. However, using his powers, he could sense that he wasn't angry. Dragon glanced at Naruto before looking back at the picture of Ace. Just someone my son knew, he said plainly, figuring that if Naruto was going to be honest with him, he might as well open up a bit in return. The fact that they shared a last name wouldn't go over the heads of most people who knew who he was. You have a son? Naruto questioned loudly. The man appears to be older than your father was when he had you. It's not that big of a shock that he would have a family, Kurama said to his host, irritated by the was just trying to take a nap and it was damn hard with the obnoxious blonde speaking so loudly. Grumpy fox, the shinobi muttered before turning back to Dragon. I guess I never really asked if you had a family anywhere, but damn, this guy's bounty is pretty big, he said, figuring that if a bounty exceeded his by so much then he had to be rather good. That earned a chuckle from Dragon at the nativity of him thinking that Ace's bounty was actually that big. You do know that there are people in the world with bounties that are over 1 billion berry, right? He asked, knowing that the alien blonde wouldn't have any real idea just how much money the Marines would be willing to pay out for the head of an emperor, their top officers, or even his own head. Billions? Naruto shouted with widened eyes. Hey, why don't you two stop talking about work and come celebrate with us the freedom of our comrades? One of the revolutionaries yelled as he came over flushed with 2 mugs filled with beer and handed one to each of the men. Loosen up, Dragon. We showed those assholes that they're not untouchable. Hell, you saw what Naruto did to that bastard's arm? I thought it was gonna come clean off, he exclaimed as he had managed to catch Naruto swatting the gun out of his hand. Dragon sighed before taking a sip of his beer and smiling at the young blonde. I guess we are due to celebrate a mission accomplished, even if there were a few hiccups along the way, the man said, earning a cheer from his more intoxicated allies. Let's relax for the night, we'll have time to talk tomorrow, Dragon told Naruto with a small smile on his face as the two joined the rest of the crew, not knowing the storm that was coming their way. Marineford looking out over the ocean, a tall man with a black afro and a long braided beard sighed as he looked down at the 2 posters he had in his hands. His outfit appeared to be of a high-ranking Marine with several decorations dotting his left side with a white long coat over it all. It had been a few days since the incident at the Sabaody archipelago where a world noble had been seriously injured and publicly embarrassed. He felt like he would never hear the end of it from his higher-ups, how the man responsible should be brought to justice immediately, but that risked going into an upfront conflict with the Revolutionary Army, something that he was certain would end in their favor, but would likely result in a massive amount of casualties on their side. The 2 pictures on the wanted poster had one thing in common between the two. In both, the men appeared to be on fire, something that should have been impossible with how devil fruits worked at the moment. Uzumaki Naruto, the man said looking at the picture of the flaming blonde. His bangs spiked up to resemble horns. He could see the cross-shaped pupils in his eyes. The teen had appeared out of nowhere, no criminal background, no place of birth, nothing at all. The Revolutionary Army had out of nowhere showed up with someone who could not only stand against one of the Shichibukai, but win. Someone who had seemingly been able to use multiple devil fruit abilities without much trouble. What had been reported to him seemed like something out of a fairy tale. They were lucky, and the augmentations to Kuma's eyes had allowed him to record the entire battle against the strange blonde. He went against everything they knew about the world. Eating more than one devil fruit was impossible as far as they knew. Anyone who had tried had died a horrific death as a result. Yet here was someone who could clone themselves, control the wind, breath fire, create balls of energy, and swapping places with other objects. Several of those powers already had users. Hearing a knock on his door, he returned to his desk and put the 2 posters down. Come in, Sengoku said loudly as he sat down in his chair. The door opened to reveal Smoker with his heavily bandaged arms. The fleet admiral recalled that Smoker had been one of the few Marines who openly engaged Uzumaki Naruto after he defeated Kuma and broke Saint Zapha's arm, to put it mildly. Normally he would have chastised them for engaging someone so potentially dangerous recklessly. However, they had been able to learn that he seemed to be able to use Haki. His orb attack had seriously hurt Smoker when he tried to wrap around him in smoke form, so not only could he use Haki, but he was advanced enough to apply it to his devil fruit, and that fruit was another matter entirely as they had no knowledge of what fruit could give the user so many abilities. Given the implications, it might be just as dangerous as Whitebeard's Gura Gura no Mi or the fabled Hito Hito no Mi. Model. Nika. Commander Smoker, I see you're up already, the fleet admiral said, feeling that the commander should be taking more time to recover from the damage done to his arms before returning to duty. I don't have time to rest, not when I let that criminal go, Smoker said, feeling determined to finish what he started and bring Naruto to justice. He had been caught off guard when the glowing blonde revealed that he had Haki and was able to hurt him despite being a smoke man. He wouldn't make that mistake again. Smoker wasn't stupid. He knew that at the moment he was severely outclassed against him. It meant that he would have to train harder than before in order to close that gap. Sengoku pinched the bridge of his nose when he heard that Smoker wanted to resume duties so soon. You will rest until you are fully recovered, Commander. It doesn't matter how much drive you have to bring someone to justice if they'll just kill you because you are still recovering, Sengoku commanded as he wasn't about to lose a marine with as much potential as Smoker. His Logia abilities alone made him a commendable fighter, being able to subdue most enemies who lacked haki. His potential would only grow as he trained and moved up the ranks. Smoker clenched his fists and prepared to retort, but one look from the fleet admiral stopped the words from slipping from his lips. Yes sir, he said reluctantly. Now, tell me anything you saw during your fight with Uzumaki Naruto, the Afroed man ordered. Smoker recalled his brief encounter with the rebel. It was almost as if he didn't know why he hurt me when he created that orb in his hand. He seemed to know that it would create wind, but seemed confused when I was in pain. He also seemed to be rather reckless. He attacked Hina without knowing her devil fruit's ability. But he's also extremely strong, shattering her iron cage around his leg by flexing it, he said before recalling the final moments where he stunned both him and Hina with a look. He also seems to have Haoshoku haki. It made us see this mirage of a fox with 9 tails standing behind him, Hina told me, and we both saw the same thing, that monstrous fox, killing us time and time again, Smoke included. That final statement made Sengoku think. Haoshoku haki had many applications. It had been used in many diverse ways by pirates and marines alike, from knocking out those weaker than them to infusing it into their weapons to make them even stronger, but to use it to inflict visions of death, that was unheard of. Was there anything that you noticed that might link his abilities together? He asked, hoping that Smoker might have some idea of what Naruto's devil fruit was. He wasn't actually on fire, Smoker said, as he had noticed one thing during their battle. Despite looking like he was covered in fire, it wasn't hot at all. More so, he had all these strange markings on him, he told his superior, who listened to what the commander had to say with rampant attention. Well, that certainly is interesting, Sengoku replied as he wondered what it could be. They didn't have enough information at the moment to make any conclusions, and it would be dangerous to tell their men something that might not even be true in the end. Smoker looked at the poster on the table and saw the image of the blonde, coated in his flames. 300 million berry? Smoker asked as he saw that Naruto's bounty had tripled from its previous one, an extreme increase for a second bounty. Sengoku nodded his head. For someone as formidable as him, a higher bounty was needed to attract stronger bounty hunters. Plus, having attacked a celestial dragon has incurred the wrath of the Gorosei, the marine leader told Smoker, who took a drag of his cigars as he stared down at the picture, the cross-shaped eyes piercing into him, that smirk mocking him. He swore to himself that he would be the one who would bring Uzumaki Naruto to justice. Getting up, Smoker turned to leave the room despite not being dismissed by the fleet admiral. He needed to train harder if he wanted to beat the strange rebel. Sengoku didn't stop him as he knew that nothing he said would stop Smoker from going off training. He had already sent out someone to chase down the blonde, so as long as Smoker didn't do anything beyond reason. Wind Grandma Naruto looked out to the sea as they rushed forward into a part of the ocean that was called the New World by the rest of the crew. Apparently one of their ships had gotten into conflict with a group called the Big Mom Pirates who were under the leadership of one of the Yunkos. It was a disastrous turn of events for them after the high of saving the slaves from the auction house. Their forces were still scattered across the ocean and unable to drop everything to respond to the emergency. I can't believe we're gonna go up against Big Mom. I heard her crew is made up of her monstrous children, one of the sailors of the Wind Grandma said, worried about their safety when going up against such a fearsome foe. Marines were one thing. Most of them were regular humans. But they weren't talking about regular humans. Then it came to the Big Mom Pirates. You guys worry too much, Naruto said as he walked over to join the conversation. You have me and Dragon on board, the blonde said with a contagious sense of confidence as he felt pretty good about his ability to fight against the powers of this world after beating Kuma without having to go all out against him. He had yet to reveal Kurama's full power, let alone the true strength of his 6-paths sage mode. The group turned towards the newest member of their army, feeling a bit more secure with the blonde around, while had only joined a few weeks ago. Naruto had already proven himself when he helped save their allies from the auction house. You're right, but still you have to realize that the Big Mom Pirates have several pirates who are just as strong if not stronger than Kuma. We're going to have to be very careful when engaging, one of the women in the group said in response. She knew that Naruto was strong. He had proven that time and time again, but just because he was strong didn't mean they all were. Dragon came out of his cabin holding a small den mushi in hand. Looking at his face, anyone could tell that he was rather stressed out. This had been the first time that Naruto had seen the revolutionary leader seem so irritated. Sabo managed to get a call in. They're being attacked by one of Big Mom's sweet commanders, Charlotte Smoothie. Dragon informed the crew of the Wind Grandma, who paled at the revelation. They had been expecting to take on maybe a few ships that had been off on their own, not one of the strongest members. Why is she attacking them? Naruto asked. wondering why they would just attack a ship without being provoked. "We don't know," Dragon replied as Sabo didn't have enough time to explain the full situation to him before the call was cut off. Even while they talked, he could hear the sounds of fighting and explosions going off in the background. "Regardless, we need to protect our allies. Even if we don't know the reason, losing so many people is unacceptable," he said, willing to risk his own life to protect those of everyone on those ships. The gale that pushed their ship forwards roared around them, rushing to battle as quickly as possible. Naruto walked up to the rail and looked off, using Kurama's ability to sense the conflict off in the distance. He could feel the despair coming from the weaker side. They were outnumbered badly, they wouldn't be able to hold out long enough for them to arrive, even with the wind blasting them forward. If they didn't hurry up, then there was a good chance that all of them would die or be captured. "I'll go on ahead then," Naruto announced as he wouldn't let people die needlessly. "Being able to run on water, I should be able to make it there much faster than the ship," he told the tattooed man who contemplated the idea. A sweet commander was likely far stronger than Kuma. Smoothie was likely the third strongest member of the Big Mom pirates behind her older brother Katakori and Big Mom herself. However, Naruto had yet to fail him. Stopping Aokiji's attack and defeating Kuma were no small feats. He was certain that Naruto would be able to at the very least stall them. "If you can make it to them before us, then go. Do whatever you need to do to save them," Dragon said, willing to do anything to save Sabo and his men. "Right," Naruto responded with a smirk as a golden aura coated his entire body. However, this time it was different from the one he used against Kuma and those two marines. This one had a black bodysuit under the golden orange coat. His skin was still the same color, but his hair was spiked up and glowing. His eyes turned orange with those same cross-shaped pupils but without the orange markings around the eyelids. Lastly, his whisker marks thickened into 6 solid bars, and behind him, 10 black orbs formed out of thin air. He didn't want to risk being too slow and showing up a second too late. No, he would go all out and fly there as quickly as possible. "That's different from before," Dragon noted as his eyes were similar to how they were when he countered Aokiji, but his body glowed like his prior form. Perhaps they were separate abilities that he was able to mix together. Throwing back a smirk, Naruto took off into the air much to the shock of everyone on the ship. "Is there anything that guy can't do?" one of the men asked as he scratched the back of his head. He let out a laugh before looking at the rest of the people gathered around. "Back in positions. We can't just let Naruto do all the work," he shouted as everyone got to work trying to speed the ship up. Dragon in my meantime just stared off at the glowing form of Naruto as he streaked through the sky like a comet. Sabo was kicked through a wall, grunting as a pick of wood jabbed through his side. Looking up, he glared at his attacker. Her stark white, wavy hair, her exotically long legs, the tattoo of a rose running up her right thigh. It was Charlotte Smoothie, 14th daughter of Big Mom and her 35th overall child. In her hand was her sword that dripped a light blue liquid. The blonde looked severely dehydrated as Smoothie had managed to cut him a few times, draining his body of its fluids. His pipe had been twisted and juiced by Smoothie, leaving it useless in battle. Tearing his coat off him, he stood up and picked up a saber that was laying near him. He needed to hold her off until Dragon showed up with reinforcements to help them fend off the Big Mom pirates. "Just give up, you've lost," Smoothie said as she approached him. She towered over him thanks to her long legs and the amount of juice that she had squeezed out of his allies, leaving husks scattered around the battlefield. "You'll die if you keep fighting. You lost the moment you stole those cookies," the long-legged woman said, raising her sword up to strike down the blonde teen. She didn't particularly want to fight against these guys, but they had taken her mother's treats, and she demanded they be captured or killed. "This whole thing is over cookies," an irate voice yelled before Smoothie's Kenbunshoku haki kicked in, seeing an attack coming towards her at extreme speeds. Senpo. Dynamic entry. Leaning back, she saw a gold and black blur sped past where her head was but landed on the boat, but before she could reply, she felt an enormous pressure slamming against the side of her face, forcing her off her feet and flying towards the glowing man. "I dodged?" she questioned in her mind as she was certain that she evaded the attack, but it still felt like a heavy kick had slammed into her cheek. The man turned around, holding a glowing blue orb in hand that he moved to thrust into her stomach, but using her sword, she released a mast of fluids to propel her away from him. Her hand went up to her cheek where she had been struck, still confused as to what had hit her. Normally her haki would warn her of an incoming attack, but she hadn't sensed anything before the strike hit. However, looking at the man, she recognized him from the wanted posters. "Uzumaki Naruto," she muttered, recalling the image of strange cross-shaped pupils and those glowing, horn-like bangs. "That's the name. Whoa, you're huge," Naruto yelled, noticing just how large Smoothie was at the moment. She was taller than even Kuma. "What is with the people in this world being so massive?" he grunted as he felt short all over again. Sabo smiled as he recognized the name of the glowing being. Dragon had informed him about the strange man he had found floating in the sea, someone who had powers like a devil fruit user and yet could float in water without drowning. Two of his men came and helped him away while Smoothie was distracted with the newcomer. Smoothie bristled slightly at the comment about her size. Typically it wasn't something people who confronted her just blurted out. So yet another power, Smoothie said as she realized that he had flown to them. Word had reached their crew about the newest juggernaut of the Revolutionary Army after his defeat of Bartholomew Kuma, multiple abilities and strong hockey. A worrisome enemy to say the least should he grow stronger. Look, we don't need to fight, Naruto said as he powered down to show that he was willing to talk things out without any more conflict between the two groups.
However, if one would look into his eyes, they would notice that they were still orange with cross-like pupils, ready to fight if things went south, especially if this is all over. Cookies, he added on, still confused why they would go so far for something so stupid. He wondered if the cage back in his home reality were this petty as well at times.
You don't seem to understand how serious this is, Smoothie said. Knowing that from the outside, causing this whole conflict over cookies might seem insane. But to their crew, their mother's hunger was a top priority. The last thing they needed was her going on a rampage and killing someone because she got hungry. These cookies had been specially ordered by our crew. When your little group raided a marine base, you ate them, she explained as the Marines had confiscated the treats when they learned that the baker had been working with pirates, only for the Revolutionary Army to come in and eat them during an attack. However, the look on Naruto's face showed that he still didn't really get it. If it helps, I'll go with you guys in exchange for ending this whole mess, and I'll talk to your captain myself if that's what you want, he offered, willing to let himself go with them in exchange for Sabo and the remaining members being allowed to go free. Unlike the rest of them, he wasn't restricted to travel by ship. He could fly and run on water if he needed to. Worst case, he could always unleash Kurama's full power. Smoothie considered the offer. It would certainly make her life easier if they didn't have to continue this mess. If Naruto had been around, then that meant that Dragon was nearing, as well as they two had always been spotted near one another. That meant reinforcements against them, and she didn't want to try her luck against the most dangerous criminal in the world. Naruto seemed pretty strong, meaning if her mom took his soul, he would make a rather strong homie. Very well, she said, accepting his offer, but you must wear seastone cuffs the entire journey, Smoothie added, feeling it was needed to negate his devil fruit in case he tried to run away from them. Sure, he replied with a smile. Sabo looked on with horror on his face as Naruto seemingly sacrificed himself for them.
Hey, Sabo, right? Naruto asked, looking at his fellow blonde. Tell Dragon not to come after me, it'll be fine, just focus on saving anyone you can, he requested, hoping that it would cut off any possibility that Dragon would think of chasing after them to save him. The blonde reluctantly nodded his head in response. Stay safe, Sabo said to Naruto. He was angry at himself. He had let his crew get caught off guard and defeated by the Big Mom pirates. Now this man he had never met but he had heard so much about was letting himself get captured for their sake. The only saving grace in his mind was that he was certain that the pirates didn't know Naruto's secret, that he had no devil fruit and those cuffs would be useless on him.
Just leave it to me, Naruto said, giving Sabo a thumbs up. Naruto sighed as he sat in the jail of Smoothie's flagship. He had been escorted there after allowing them to capture him in order to end the fighting between their forces. The Big Mom pirates had placed their seastone wrist cuffs on him in order to prevent him from using his powers. He had already tested it, and he was still able to channel his chakra despite them. He didn't know how long he would be down here, but so far he had been treated decently well. So you're the one who got the Marines all up in arms, huh? Someone said to the blonde, who looked up to see someone who seemed to be similar to Smoothie even if a bit shorter. She had the same skin tone as the sweet commander, but her hair was a mahogany brown. Looking at the shorter man, she found it a bit hard to believe that he had managed to land a hit against her sister. Luckily he was bound by seastone so he wouldn't be able to do anything. I guess, granted I don't think I really did that much, Naruto replied, scratching the back of his head. He understood that to the government, he had basically attacked a god as far as they were concerned. But to him the world nobles were just assholes with stupid hair. He figured that beating Kuma would be pretty bad, but not that bad given that Kuma was still a pirate in the end. You attack a world noble, beat a Shichibukai, then beat 2 marine officers, and it's not that bad? She wondered if the blonde had hit his head as he figured that he had done worse back in his home dimension. You're a strange man, she said as she placed a tray of food in front of the cell and slid it through an opening for him. Looking down he noticed that it was mainly just sweets like cinnamon rolls and a smoothie. You guys got ramen? He asked, wondering if they had his favorite food for him. The woman's right eye twitched as she fought back the urge to kick the cell's bars down at the audacity of the blonde. You're lucky to even be getting food, she yelled at him, furious that they would take their kindness for granted. It's not my fault, you guys just don't know good food, Naruto replied as he picked up a smoothie and took a sip from it. His eyes widened as the smoothie did taste pretty good overall. It was honestly the best one he had ever had, but I will say this smoothie is amazing. he noted as he finished it as quickly as he could. Not surprised. My sister made it with the juice she squeezed from your blonde friend, the woman mentioned with a proud smile. Naruto's eyes widened as he spat out the remainder of the juice he had in his mouth. She squeezed what? The blonde shinobi questioned in horror what he had just drank. He assumed that by blonde friend, she meant Sabo, who looked dehydrated when arrived. His cheeks puffed as he ran to the toilet in his cell and vomited out everything in his stomach. The long-legged woman gagged as she watched Naruto empty his stomach. What's wrong with you? Sister's juices are exquisite. You should be honored to have been given one. She yelled at the blonde who flipped her off. Why you? She growled before the door to the prisoner area. Cinnamon, calm yourself, Smoothie ordered as she approached the two. Looking back at the white-haired woman, Naruto glared at her wiping the residue of vomit from his mouth. Smoothie couldn't believe that the blonde puking his guts out was the same one who had hit her despite her haki allowing her to predict his attack. I want to talk to him. Alone. She told her sister who nodded and left without another word. So come to brag about getting me in cuffs? Or are we getting near our destination? Naruto asked, walking up to her with his arms crossed.
I want to know how you hit me despite me having avoided it, she demanded, pulling a chair over and sitting down across from him. Her normally laid-back appearance was replaced with a more serious one as she needed to know how he breached her defenses without much effort. If he could do that to her, he could do that to others like her brother and maybe even her mother.
Haki, Naruto replied simply, not feeling like giving her the real reason that his attack had hit her. She was for all intent and purposes his enemy until things got ironed out. She had attacked his ally and was holding him as a prisoner. That and explaining sage mode to someone who had no idea what chakra was a nightmare for people far smarter than him. He didn't feel like going through the whole explanation all over again. The woman scowled at the simple explanation that she was given. If that was the case, then either he had incredibly powerful haki and was skillful enough to use extremely advanced techniques, or he was lying to her. Worse was, something seemed to be blocking her haki from attempting to read him, preventing her from discerning if it really was the truth. And your multiple devil fruit powers? She asked, deciding to move on to something else. Finding out just what devil fruit he had eaten would help them if he ever became their enemy. Naruto chuckled as he leaned back against the wall. Well, I don't really know, ya know, he responded, feigning ignorance on the subject. Of course he had no devil fruit, but that didn't mean she had to know that little fact. If anything, the revelation would put them on even higher alert around him since their cuffs would be revealed to be ineffective. Maybe I ate more than one? Ever considered that? He questioned back.
That's impossible. No one is able to have more than one devil fruit, Smoothie countered, not believing that someone could have eaten more than one fruit. Anyone who had ever tried to do so had died a horrible death. Even her mother wouldn't risk attempting to eat a second devil fruit due to the ramifications that came with trying it. On the other hand, if he somehow was able to multiple devil fruits, she didn't want to think of the possibilities.
Well, I have been known to make the impossible possible, he replied with a smirk on his face before feeling a blade stab into his chest. It wasn't deep enough to cause him any real damage, but deep enough that it should have drawn blood. Instead, a juice started to leak out of him into the sword as she started to wring his juice out. Naruto grunted as he contemplated just breaking out instead of having to deal with her. Do you think I am joking? Smoothie asked him in a calm voice. You think I am? He replied, glaring up at her. Smoothie looked at him as she drained him. His juice tasted sweet and potent. It was rather refreshing and felt perfectly balanced. She felt so tempted to suck him dry, to take everything from him until he was a husk on the ground. However, instead of juicing him dry, she reluctantly pulled the sword back and placed it in her scabbard. That is not for me to decide, but you were delicious, Smoothie answered, as in the end the choice of what to do with him lay in her mother's hands. Thanks, he said as he felt Kurama's chakra fixing the damage that she had done to him. Look, I only came along to help smooth things out between the Revolutionary Army and your family. I am not going to tell you anything more or less than what I need to, Smoothie, Naruto claimed as he refused to say anything of substance to her or her family. Really, one of the key advantages he had was that no one in this world had chakra like him or really knew how to counter his abilities. Killing you would be too troublesome. Besides, it's not like you guys did anything against me. It's Mom that wants revenge, she said, knowing that she didn't really care about the stolen cookies, but her mother did. Smoothie didn't see the point in killing him, especially when he had made her life easier by just coming with them instead of fighting. Given the limited knowledge of his abilities, she was certain that the battle between them would be a tough one. The ability to fly was one that she didn't have a way to beat aside from blasting juice into the air and hoping to hit him. Same, it's why I didn't just throw you in the ocean when I arrived, Naruto said in turn, knowing that if he had aimed his kick differently he could have knocked her out into the ocean where she'd drown thanks to her devil fruit. However, killing one of Big Mom's children would be an open declaration of war against her and her entire fleet. It wouldn't exactly help forward his goal of bringing peace, a goal that he knew might actually be harder than in his home world given all the conflicting powers and how disconnected all the islands were. Smoothie's glare intensified as he mentioned how he could have killed her if he wanted to by throwing her into the ocean. she still felt the phantom pain of his invisible attack crashing into her face. It was then that she recalled what he called his attack senpo. What did that mean? Sage art? Perhaps that was what a clue about his devil fruit, but it didn't really tell her anything about what its powers would be. I think we're done for today, Smoothie said as she decided that she would leave him for now. It was clear that he wouldn't give her anything of use. Naruto sat cross-legged in his cell as he drew on the natural energy around him. Despite how little land there was on this world, the ocean had more than enough sea life to create the energy he needed. He had been on the ship for a week and it had been 2 days since he last talked to Smoothie, and since then it had been a rotating cast of Charlotte's siblings. He could sense everyone on the ship, making sure to end his sage mode should any of them come down to his cell. Overall, it wasn't so bad. They had brought him regular water and beer instead of juice after his negative reaction to Smoothie's juice. Most of the food was generally sweet, but they weren't unreasonable. How long are you going to stay here? This is getting boring, Naruto, Kurama said from within his seal. So far all it had been was mocking from some of the idiots who came down to mock him or questioning from some of the smarter ones. Aside from that, all his host did was meditate and do light exercising. If we break out now, well, expose that sea stone has no effect on us, Naruto replied as he knew that breaking out now would give him away. As much as he hated it, for now he would have to sit and wait until they arrived to meet with Big Mom. Besides, this is honestly some of the most time we've had to just sit, Naruto added as he had been rather busy since arriving in this world. Kurama fell slightly as he knew that his host had been pushing down the feelings of letting people down by trying to keep busy. Fighting pirates, partying with the sailors of the Wind Grandma, talking to Dragon. They were all just to kill time so he didn't have to think about what was going on back home. If his friends were dead, if Sasuke had been able to free everyone, if they really had won against Kaguya and Black Zetsu, they had a lot of unanswered questions that weighed heavily on the blonde. Questions that he might never get answers to given that they were stranded as far as they knew. Laying down, Kurama admitted that he wondered how his siblings were doing. Sure, Naruto had some of their chakra within him now, so he always felt their presence, but it was just their chakra existing within the blonde, separate from the actual Biju. Best we just let our old world go. Not like we can do anything to get back, Kurama muttered, more to himself than Naruto. Yeah, Naruto muttered as he let the sage mode fade away as someone entered the jail. Looking over, it was yet another member of Big Mom's family. Opening his eyes, he looked up to see a rather pale woman with fuchsia-colored hair and horns coming out of it that looked almost like arrows. You're new, so come to insult me? He asked, wondering what the woman wanted from him. It's lunchtime, she said as she placed a plate on the floor and pushed it into his cell. I also wanted to ask you something, Uzumaki Naruto, the woman said as Naruto picked up a sweet roll and bit into it. You know it's proper courtesy to introduce yourself, ya no, Naruto pointed out as he didn't know the woman's name yet. The pale woman stared at him for a moment as he waited for her to tell him her name. My name is Charlotte Galette, she answered, introducing herself by giving him her full name. Well, I guess it's nice to meet you, Galette, Naruto replied with a small smile as at least she seemed to be even a little less malicious than most of the people who came down here. If it's about my abilities, I already told Smoothie what I am willing to say, the shinobi pointed out, not wanting to waste either of their time with questions that had either already been answered or had refused to answer. Galette shook her head at that. No, it has nothing to do with that, she responded, not wanting to seem like she only came here to interrogate him. I wanted to know why you decided to sacrifice yourself when you could have just stayed back and let Smoothie end things without your involvement, the horned woman stated, wanting to figure out why he would do something so selfless for people who aren't even related to him.
Huh, I wasn't really expecting that, to be honest, Naruto said, a little confused by the question but nonetheless felt a bit happy to talk about something else. I did it to stop the fighting. Sure, I could have just sat back and let Sabo get captured or killed, the rest of the crew possibly juiced by Smoothie, but then what? All those people would have been lost for what? Some stupid cookies. If me taking the fall helps save my allies, then it's worth it, he told her honestly.
And if you died? Then that's that, but I wouldn't die without giving y'all one hell of a fight, he said, chuckling as he punched his palm. This world wasn't even his own. He had nothing really to lose, but he wanted to make the best of his current situation. He knew his friends would want him to be happy and try to move on. To live a life worth living, and to him, that meant fighting for peace, but I also wanted to end the conflict right there, so that there wouldn't be any lingering bad blood. I went with you all so that they wouldn't try and go after you guys. If you had killed Sabo and his crew, it would have been the same as declaring war, and more people would have died, Naruto added as he just wanted to save as many lives as he could, on both sides. Galette stood silent, staring down at Naruto with a contemplating gaze. You're a very selfless human. Can't really say that about most people, she told him, finding his loyalty and drive to minimize losses refreshing in an ocean of people who would destroy dozens of ships without thinking of everyone who died in the process. Just tell me, could you have destroyed our ships before you attacked? She asked him, her tone serious. Yeah, Naruto answered casually, I wanted I could have destroyed your ships from the air with my Rasenshuriken or something similar, he said, knowing that people already have seen him use the Rasenshuriken before. The woman bit her lip at the information she had been given by the blonde. She was certain that he had been telling the truth. Destroying a ship wasn't exactly hard for some of the stronger pirates out there, but typically that came at the risk of falling into the ocean yourself. But Naruto had shown the ability to fly, which negated that risk, meaning he could have bombarded them from above and they would have been left helpless.
Why didn't you do it? I didn't want to end so many lives so senselessly. Sure, it would have been more one-sided, but still I am certain that there are plenty of people on these ships that don't deserve to outright die. Like I said before, I turned myself into you guys to save lives on both sides, he told her honestly. He wasn't the biggest fan of killing. If it came down to it he would, but unless the situation called for it, it wasn't his first option.
And if we rejected your offer? She asked, dreading the answer. We wouldn't be here right now. Naruto answered vaguely, but the real answer lay plainly before them. Their forces would have fought until one side surrendered or was completely wiped out. Looking at the entrance to the brig, Naruto smirked as he called out to the person hiding behind the door. You know, for someone so big you are awfully sneaky. He called out, much to Galet's surprise. The door opened to reveal Smoothie walking into the area and joining her sister and the prisoner. You knew I was there? She asked, figuring that the cuffs would have impaired his ability to use Kenbunshoku Haki enough that he wouldn't sense her. Seems I underestimated you. She sighed, figuring that perhaps his Haki was strong enough to bypass the interference the sea stone should have imposed on him. She should have used stronger cuffs, it seemed. I was going to question you some more, maybe get some juice out of you, but it seems Galette beat me to it. Granted, she had more luck with you than I did, the white-haired commander told them, feeling a bit remorseful that she had failed in getting him to talk compared to her sister. Maybe if you didn't juice me I'd be more open to talking with you, the blonde shinobi retorted with a flat look on his face. I figured you got tired of me. He laughed a little. Please, your juice is exceptional. I might just ask Mom if I can keep you for myself, she said, having enjoyed the juice that came from the Jinchuriki. Phrasing is kinda important, Naruto muttered with a faint blush on his face at how the statement could be taken out of context. Idiot, Smoothie growled at the insinuation that she meant that in any way more than just using him for delicious juice. Whatever, so can I leave this cell? It's been a week and I am getting a bit restless, he complained as he figured that with the cuffs on, he should be allowed to walk around since he wouldn't really be able to fly off or swim away without dying as far as they knew. You'll be allowed to leave once we arrive at our base, until then you'll have to stay here, she told him in a rather harsh tone. Oh come on. It's not like I can really do anything with these things on. He yelled at her, waving the sea stone cuffs in the air. What am I supposed to swim back to the wind, Grandma? I can't exactly fly with these things on, he questioned, wanting to at the very least be allowed to walk around a bit. And risk you getting out of them and running away? She asked. Knowing that there might be a crewmate or two who were discontent with their leadership and might betray them if Naruto promised to get them away safely. At least here, if he tried to break out, the entire cell was lined with a more potent sea stone that would completely drain the strength of any devil fruit user. You'll stay right there, Smoothie said firmly before turning to leave the two behind. She knew that Gillette hated those who betrayed the family, so she trusted her to not do anything stupid with the blonde. Naruto sighed and slumped against the wall. He groaned in irritation at still being locked here. Wind Grandma Dragon sighed as he had yet to have any form of contact from Naruto. He was grateful for his sacrifice in order to save Sabo and the rest of the revolutionaries aboard his ship, but he was worried about his well-being. The Big Mom pirates were a notoriously brutal group, known for treating their own lower-ranking crew members poorly as well as those they encountered. His spies had recounted to him how Big Mom would send her armada out to find rare ingredients for her tea parties, causing massive amounts of death and destruction along the way. It soothed his mind knowing that he was only pretending to be captured since he was immune to the effects of sea stone and by extension the ocean. Think hell be okay? Sabo asked as he knew that Naruto had been on Dragon's mind. The older man closed his eyes and folded his hands in front of his face. I am certain that hell be okay in the end. I just hope he doesn't get himself in a situation he can't get out of. Sabo felt a bit guilty about the whole situation since in the end it was his fault as chief of staff of the Revolutionary Army. When his crew ate the mountain of cookies that the Marines had in their base, he figured that it would be more of an annoyance than anything else to their sworn enemy. He never once imagined that they belonged to the Big Mom pirates. He doubted that even the Marines knew that when they confiscated them, had he been stronger and more dutiful, Naruto would never have had to go with them. Don't blame yourself, you could have never known this would end like this, Dragon said as he got up from the table. He could tell that despite having only met Naruto once, his actions had touched Sabo and he was putting the blame on himself. For now, we must trust in him. "We're here," Smoothie said as she clanged her sword against the seastone bars that kept Naruto in his cell. The blonde groaned as he had been sleeping when the giantess decided to wake him up. Instead of getting up he waved her away only for her to kick the bars with her long, powerful legs. "Wake up." 5 more minutes. "Geez, annoying giant women," he muttered as he turned away from her. Eye twitching, Smoothie opened his cell's door and walked in with a popped vein on her forehead, picking the groggy shinobi up and began shaking him to wake him up. "Wake up, you annoyance, or I'll wring you dry," she yelled at him, having had enough of his attitude. "I am up. I am up," Naruto yelled as his head swung back and forth due to her movements. Putting the blonde down, Smoothie pulled out another set of handcuffs. "And those are?" he questioned. "Stronger cuffs," she said as he turned around and let her clamp them around his wrists, locking his arms behind his back.
"You know some people might find this pleasurable." Kurama snickered as it was now his Jinchuriki's turn to feel what it was like being restrained. He still recalled the time the blonde dropped Torii Gates on him to pin him down. Revenge was sweet. "You know, for one of the most powerful crews in the world, you guys are pretty cautious," he pointed out. "More like I don't need you getting on Mother's nerves and causing an incident," Smoothie countered, not wanting to deal with what might happen if the blonde got out and attacked their crew or worse, Big Mom herself. She feared for the citizens of Whole Cake Island as a whole in that case. "You don't trust me. I trust you as far as I can kick you," Smoothie answered. "Well, with legs like yours I am pretty sure you could kick me pretty far." Naruto laughed as he was led out of the room by Smoothie, whose brow was twitching even more at his stupid joke about her legs. "I swear, if I am allowed to keep you, I'll wring you dry every day," she growled. Naruto looked up at the massive cake that sat on the island they had landed on. He had to be honest, he had never seen a building or cake that big before in his life. The shinobi had to wonder just how much it cost to bake it, or rather how it was made. Maybe Big Mom had some sort of cake-based devil fruit among her family which created it. Questions for later. "That's a big cake," Naruto said to Smoothie, who held the other end of a chain that connected to the cuffs around his wrist. "You guys really live here?" he asked, wondering how anyone could possibly live in a city completely made out of sweets. As he looked around he saw that people lived in the city, but there were also sentient things. It seemed like different things had been alive, from some of the cakes to random objects like signs and fences. "Got a problem with that?" one of the male members of the Charlotte family asked with a sneer on his face. Looking at him he couldn't help but laugh a little at his clownish face. He had to admit, most of the people in this family were extremely weird looking. "What are you laughing at?" the Klo-looking man yelled at the chained blonde. "Mont door." Smoothie snapped as she didn't want to cause a bigger scene than they already were by dragging someone with a 300 million berry bounty towards their castle. Naruto chuckled as the man seemed to shy away when the tall woman glared at him. However, he felt a yank to his neck afterwards. "And you don't antagonize my family," she stated, not leaving any room for negotiation from either one. "Sorry if I find the fact that your castle is a cake a little shocking." Naruto shouted at Smoothie, who sighed and decided to just answer his question and get it over with. "Yes, our base is a giant cake and many of us live there," she told him, finding it easier to humor him than trying to keep him quiet. It was one of the many lessons she had learned about the mildly irritating blonde. "That's kinda cool actually," Naruto muttered as they arrived at the gates of the castle and were allowed to enter without much of an issue. As they proceeded up he noticed that a lot of things had eyes on them, like more sentient objects. "I implore you not to say anything stupid," Smoothie whispered to him as they entered into what looked to be massive throne room with massive cakes and sweets around. He noticed that they too were alive. Looking around at the pink and purple striped walls of the room he noticed framed pictures of food. "This woman must love eating," Kurama muttered to his host as he couldn't take the decor of the castle seriously. It was completely cake-themed. Naruto smirked as he held back a chuckle, however his laugh died in his mouth as he saw the massive cake that had been blocking the throne get lifted up by a giant hand and devoured by the woman who sat on said throne. She was titanic, over 28 feet tall, easily the tallest human he had ever seen. She made even her long-legged daughter look small by nearly doubling her size. She had wild pink hair that almost reminded him of Sakura's color. Naruto and the rest watched as she devoured the entire cake on her own, a cake that he was certain would have taken half the Jonin in Konoha to finish. The Akamaki clan was excluded, of course. "What the fuck?" Naruto and Kurama thought together as they watched cake, frosting, and saliva splatter everywhere while the obese giant of a woman tore through it like an animal. Naruto's jaw dropped a little at the sight, his cheeks a bit green. "I think I am gonna be sick," he whispered to himself. However, the glare he got from Smoothie made it known that she heard him as well. The woman tugged on his chain, pulling him forward towards the Yonko, who licked her fingers clean of the remains of the cake. Turning towards the two, Big Mom's eyes fell on Naruto, who grimaced at the closer view of the woman. "Mamama." So Smoothie, who is this? The massive woman asked her daughter as she spotted the blonde in chains. Uzumaki Naruto of the Revolutionary Army, I can introduce myself, the blonde said before Smoothie could answer her mother. Big Mom glared at the impudent shinobi who dared to speak out of line. Oh. You're the ones who stole and ate my cookies, huh? She asked, recalling that she had sent Smoothie out to get revenge on the people who dared to steal her precious sweets. Looking closely at him, Linlin recognized him as the one who attacked one of the world nobles and defeated Kuma. Well, I'll take your soul as payment, she decided, not wanting to waste any time with the runt. Using her devil fruit, she tried to exploit the fear she assumed Naruto had for her to rip his soul out of his body. Naruto looked up at her, ready to break out of his confines at a moment's notice as he felt her presence wash over him. A hairline crack ran up the cuffs, but nothing happened. In the end it was just the two glaring at one another. Is something supposed to happen? Naruto questioned as he kept his eyes locked on Big Mom's. Big Mom on her end was shocked. Looking down at Naruto, she didn't sense a single bit of fear in him as he faced her. If anything, he seemed even more defiant in the wake of her declaration. However, there was something else about him that shocked her more than being unable to take his soul. She could sense something was off with him. She could sense that he had two souls within his body. Both of the souls within the blonde were also extremely powerful and unlike anything she had ever felt before. They felt alien to her. She was equally impressed and furious that he had been able to resist her devil fruit's power. Mamama, she laughed, gritting her teeth as she backed down from trying to impose fear on him through her haki. She didn't sense him using it in return to counter her. He took it and withstood it. Her children behind him looked scared as they too had felt her haki wash over them during her attempt to steal the life from Naruto. What to do with you now? She said, narrowing her eyes. Her first option had failed and she saw him lowering his guard now that it seemed she wasn't going to attack. He was strong and his soul told her that he was different from other humans. There was something more to him than a pretty face. Looking at Smoothie, a wide smile spread over her face. Kurama, I don't like that smile. Naruto thought to himself as he was disturbed a little by the way Big Mom was looking at him. It was clear that the woman was planning something and it likely wasn't anything good for him. To pay me back for stealing my treats, you'll marry my daughter Smoothie. She announced without a second thought as the rest of those in attendance looked at her with widened eyes. Naruto's jaw dropped as he heard the announcement that the Yonko made for all to hear. Looking up at the long-legged women, she too seemed to have been taken by surprise. Bwaahaha, Kurama laughed as he heard the way Naruto would have to pay Big Mom back for the problems caused by Sabo and his men. No, I can't marry her, I am a criminal, Naruto said, shaking his head as he wanted to find any excuse to get out of the situation. Naruto, we're all criminals. Smoothie pointed out that while Naruto was a member of a rebellious organization, they were all pirates and therefore criminals as well. She wasn't particularly fond of the idea of marrying the blonde. She had joked about asking Big Mom to let her keep him as a juice source, but it was just a joke. Are you sure about this? Smoothie asked, wondering if her mom was actually serious about it. Big Mom glared down at her daughter. Smoothie, you dare question me? She growled as she didn't take her daughter's insinuation that she might be making a mistake lightly. You're 31 years old and still unmarried. I think this is a great opportunity for you. You two will be married, she declared, flipping from angry to joyous at the thought that her 14th daughter would be marrying someone exotic. Her dream was to bring all races together under her empire, and if Naruto's soul was anything to go by, he was different from every other human she had ever met. Smoothie looked away as she knew that her mother wouldn't budge on this. Absolutely not, Naruto yelled as he didn't feel like he was ready to be married off, especially being forced to marry someone he just met like 2 weeks ago. Sorry you old hag, but I am not up for marriage, he yelled, earning some gasps as he dared to call the legendary Big Mom an old hag. Why you? I'll teach you to talk back to your mother-in-law, Big Mom yelled as she brought her fist up and threw a fast punch at Naruto, who was shocked that the monster of a woman could move so fast. Her fist turned black as she used haki to reinforce it. However, the fist never made contact with Naruto's massive arm. Twice as big as Linlin's came out from the blonde's back and caught her fist. Just the shockwave from the collision threw back the weaker members of the Charlotte family, while those capable of withstanding the clash watched on in awe as their mother's fist was blocked by the massive orange limb coming from their captive. The walls and floor of the throne room cracked and splintered from the force the two were exerting. And the most unbelievable part was that Naruto was able to use his powers while under the effects of the sea stone around his arms. Kurama, what did you do? Naruto asked as his tenant had reacted without consent and blocked Big Mom's punch on his own, something that should have been impossible by the laws of this world given the circumstances. Baka, in your current form that could have seriously hurt you, he yelled at the blonde as Naruto had been in his regular state without either sage mode or using his chakra to enhance himself. Big Mom pulled her arm back but smirked despite having her attack stopped. While she hadn't used her full strength, it did confirm in her mind that the second soul inside of him could act independently from Naruto even if he was being restrained by Sea Stone. How? Smoothie asked as she watched the massive orange gold returned into the man she had taken prisoner. Mama, he has two souls. The large woman answered, laughing at the looks on her children's faces, while Naruto himself looked shell-shocked by the fact that Big Mom had figured out that he had a separate entity inside of him. My Soru no Mi allows me to manipulate souls, so I could sense that you have more than one. Quite simple, she explained to him before picking up a large donut and biting into it when she saw the look on his face and felt the need to brag. I think we underestimate her. Kurama grunted to his Jinchuriki as neither ever expected someone from this world to figure it out. But given how different and strange devil fruits were in regards to their powers, it should have been expected that one or more might be able to sense him inside of his host. Naruto sighed as he figured that he would have to bullshit why he had two souls, since saying I have a mountain-sized demon sealed inside of me would probably be considered crazy, or not given how weird this world was. The soul of my friend was trapped inside of me when I was younger, so he can use some of my powers since technically he isn't touching the sea stone. He lied to explain how he was able to use his powers despite the sea stone, and he desperately hoped that she bought it. I see, Big Mom said, narrowing her eyes on him. It was believable enough, stranger things had happened after all. However, she was certain that he wouldn't openly tell her anything extremely important. Well, you can stay in Smoothie's room for now, she'll keep guard over you. She told him as the quicker the two bonded the faster she'd have another grandchild. She could already imagine being called Big Grandma. I already told you I am not marrying anyone. He yelled at her but was ignored as Smoothie pulled him away by the chain to her room as per her mother's order. You know, we could just leave, Kurama mentioned to his host, figuring at this point it might just be more worth it to just scram and let things fall where they do. Yeah, but I'd rather not cause a massive scene if it can be avoided, Naruto said as he planned to wait until he had an opportunity to leave without having an entire armada of pirates following after him. He figured that it wouldn't exactly be helpful to have one of the most powerful people in the world against him. Having left Naruto in her room with some guards and homies looking after him, Smoothie decided to take a much-needed break away from her fiancé. She didn't know what her mom was thinking, trying to marry the two of them. She knew that the day would come when she would have to marry someone, likely someone she didn't know well or even loved, but she never expected it to be so soon. Like all her siblings, she was at the mercy of her mother's wishes. She had seen Big Mom nearly kill their siblings on multiple occasions using her devil fruit when she flew into one of her food-driven states of madness, or just because they upset her. In the end, she was stuck for the moment. Turning the corner, she ran into one of her older brothers. Like her, he was exceptionally tall, a trait he got from his mother given his lack of long-leg tribe genetics. Katakori, she greeted as her brother turned to her, uncrossing his arms to speak with her. What is it? You noticed it, didn't you? He said, getting straight to the point. His careful eyes had caught what had happened when their mother initially threatened the man who would be dubbed his sister's fiancé. When Mom told him that the price would be his soul, he was ready to break his cuffs off, Katakori stated, seeing that Naruto had been careful enough not to flat out destroy the cuffs, but broke them enough that in case he needed his hands he would be able to fight back. Smoothie nodded her head, having seen it from behind when Naruto's body had tensed up. A thin crack going up the sea stone where his arms had been bound together. Yeah, she said, thinking back to all the time he spent sitting in her ship waiting for them to land. All that time, he had been faking being powerless. He could have broken those restraints, and even if he didn't, he would have been able to use his devil fruit thanks to his second soul, as their mother put it. He could have escaped at any time, she said, feeling like she had been pitied by the blonde. Keep a close eye on him. He'll likely try something soon, he said, having felt that Naruto wasn't taking his situation lying down. He could feel the agitation in him when Smoothie was dragging him to her room. If he does, I'll juice him for all he's worth, Smoothie replied, loyal to her family even if they made her do things she didn't want to do. Sitting on Smoothie's bed, he could help but gag a little at how literally everything was food-themed. Looking around the room, he could see the eyes on the lamps and paintings looking at him. In one of the fruit baskets, an apple was staring at him as well. It was a bit unnerving. Luckily they had taken off the sea stone due to the revelation that he could have likely taken them off at any time. Big Mom wanted to be courteous to her future son-in-law. Because courteous people force others to marry their children, he muttered as he rubbed his wrists that had been a bit sore from being locked for so long. The door opened and in came a jellybean woman. Naruto faced her a flat look before signing and rubbing his temples. What was that reaction? She yelled at him, insulted by the way he reacted to her entering the room. You're a jelly bean. What the fuck? Naruto commented as he is starting to believe that He was the strange one given how everything in this world was so Strange, I guess I do come from another universe, he thought to himself reluctantly. This wasn't his world, so could he really judge? I just wanted to say, you aren't worthy of my big sis, the jelly bean-shaped woman said sharply with a smirk on her face. Cool, leave, Naruto said, dismissing her, not caring to talk to the more rude members of the Charlotte family. He swore, half of these guys were arrogant as hell or just sadistic. He even recalled meeting a little girl who pulled a knife out on him. Granted, he knew of some people back home who had been killed at a younger age. His own sensei Kakashi had become a genin by the age of 5 and got a promotion to chunin at the age of 6. You can't talk to me like that. The jellybean-like woman yelled at him only for a knife to dig into the pasty door behind her, missing her face by a centimeter. Then maybe you should reconsider your attitude, he growled, having enough of this family for a lifetime. Seriously, between the younger members and Big Mom herself, she didn't know which was worse. Whatever, Naruto said as he stood up and walked towards the window, only for them to close on their own, eyes on them glaring at Naruto, who pushed them open by force. I am gonna go for a walk, he said as he leapt out the window. Guards! The dark-haired woman cried out as she saw that her sister's fiancé was trying to escape. Naruto punched through a tree as he decided to let out some of his agitation by training a bit. He had heard the girl call out for the guards when he leapt from the window. Taking deep breaths, he moved through the frog-cate emotions, drawing in the energy from the surrounding area to expand his senses outward. He could sense that someone was approaching him, walking towards him at an even pace. Putting an end to his training, he looked back to see yet another incredibly tall person with crimson hair wearing a leather jacket that left his chest exposed. Naruto could see pick-colored tattoos on the left side of his chest and arm. A large scarf covered the lower half of his face, but he could see what looked like scars going up from where his mouth would be. I had a feeling that you'd try and run away, the large man said, looking down at the much shorter blonde. Please, if I wanted to run away I could have been off this island by now, Naruto replied as his orange-tinted eyes locked with the monk's red eyes. I don't think I got your name. The man raised an eyebrow as he figured that his sister's fiancé would have already known who he was, but it seemed that he knew less than expected. Charlotte Katakori, he replied as he made sure to keep his Kanbunshoku haki ready to react to the shinobi in case he attempted to attack him or run away again. However, he knew that Naruto could fly if needed, so he had no reason to think he was lying about being able to leave if he wanted. So why did you run away? He asked, wondering what could have happened. Naruto narrowed his eyes slightly. Have you considered that I am not particularly happy being forced into an engagement? He asked, not caring if he insulted the muscular pirate. You find her ugly? He asked, crossing his arms as he waited for the blonde's response. It's not even that, Naruto replied as he leaned against one of the remaining trees. While the size difference is a bit strange to me, she's fairly beautiful in all honesty. No, I have a problem with your mother trying to force me into marriage when I am not looking to get married. I have too much going on right now for a relationship, Naruto replied, feeling that he still wasn't fully acclimated to this new world. He was still surprised by all the strange and bizarre things that existed here. He even learned the blood types and it made zero sense to him. Good thing you'll never need a transfusion, Kurama commented with a smirk on his face, knowing that he could heal his host faster than almost any doctor could. That being said, he wouldn't be surprised if there was some healing devil fruit that would allow someone to instantly heal people. Katakori sighed as he knew that his mother's antics could appear strange to outsiders. He respected and loved his mother, so if Naruto wanted to go against her wishes, he would do anything within his power to stop him. That might be, but it'd be easier for all of us if you simply accepted your fate in this matter, he commented, making it clear that if Naruto didn't, then things would likely become much harder for him. Naruto couldn't help but scoff at the mention of accepting his fate. I've never been one to accept fate lying down, ya know, the blonde replied as he leaned against one of the many sentient trees in the area, getting a glare from it but was ultimately ignored by it. Besides, do you really think your sister even wants to marry me? I don't know, Katakori replied, mirroring the blonde by sitting down on a rock. If Naruto wasn't going to show him aggression, then neither would he. If anything, he was certain that talking with Naruto would help get him back in the castle compared to trying to fight him. But my sister will accept it if it's what mom wants, then she'll do it, he told the shinobi, who narrowed his eyes. But she should be allowed to choose who she marries. Naruto yelled at him, too irritated how easily this man just seemed to accept the state of things. Katakori sighed as it was clear that they wouldn't see eye to eye on the issue. Sure, he wanted his sister to be happy, but they couldn't refuse the wishes of their mother. Doing so would risk their own lives and the stability of their family. That's just the way it is, he said, not wanting to waste any more time arguing about something so pointless. Naruto didn't say anything before turning towards the ocean, Katakori unfolding his arms as he figured that it would come to this. I'll come back with you and talk with Big Mom if that is what you want, he said before looking back at Katakori with crossed orange eyes, but I refuse to be bullied into marriage, Naruto declared firmly. Katakori closed his eyes as he didn't want the blonde to cause a scene with his mother. He knew that if Naruto upset Big Mom enough, she might go on a rampage again and he would have to deal with it himself, irritating to say the least. From what he noticed, Naruto seemed to be well-natured, definitely unlike most pirates. Bringing up Smoothie's right to choose her husband was enough to show him that Naruto wasn't being completely selfish. He almost had to respect him for it. Ask her on a date with her, Katakori suggested. Normally he would have tried to fight and subdue the blonde just to get him back in the castle, but he knew better. His haki showed him that any attempt to do so would result in Naruto flying away. What? A date? Katakori repeated. The problems you brought up would be null if you two were naturally attracted to one another. He stated, believing that if Smoothie and Naruto fell in love, then their mother's demand would be more of a formality than anything else. I hate this world. Naruto slammed his head into one of the candy walls of the whole cake chateau. He had ended up agreeing with Kakuryu's plan to spend some time with Smoothie. He figured that it would be best to just pretend to make an effort until he had an opportunity to escape without having the Big Mom pirates at his and by extension Dragon's back. Since his marriage to Smoothie was their way of paying Big Mom back for stealing her cookies, his running would implicate the entirety of the Revolutionary Army. Sure, he could handle himself, but what if they hunted down some of their weaker members? Would they stand a chance against Smoothie, who had beaten their chief of staff? It wasn't exactly something he wanted to find out. Pulling his head back, he dusted off some of the pieces of cake from his hair and glared at a snickering lamp. Oh, shut up you, he growled as he stood up and rolled his shoulders. He had yet to set up the date with her, but he figured something simple at the beach or something like that. Think it's too late to just blow the castle up and leave? He asked his lifelong partner inside of him. You know you wouldn't do that, you don't have it in you. Kurama replied, opening one eye as he had been resting before his Jinchuriki spoke to him. When it came to the massive fox, he couldn't help but be amused by the situation that Naruto had been trapped in at the moment. He himself would have just left and dealt with the consequences as they came, but his friend didn't want to open his allies up to danger. You could always just let me take over and I'll wrap it all up quickly, he suggested with a dark chuckle at the thought of going on a quick rampage. There are people on this island who aren't part of the Big Mom pirates, Kurama, Naruto pointed out, as there was an entire city right outside of the cake castle. If the whole thing came crashing down, it would certainly crush a lot of people under millions of pounds of cake, frosting, cookies, and candy. I mean, I wouldn't mind taking a bite out of the castle either, the Kyuubi added on as he admirably was curious as to how the castle tasted like. Naruto facepalmed at the comment. I think this world is getting to you, Kurama, he muttered, his eyebrow twitching at the ludicrously of the statement. Last thing he wanted was Kurama to start acting like the insane people that seemed to inhabit this ocean-filled planet. Seriously, who the fuck makes a castle out of cake? Naruto sighed as he broke a piece of candy cane from the window, only for it to scream in agony as the window had in fact been alive. Sorry, he yelled, putting it back as best he could. Talking to your other soul? Smoothie asked as she walked into the room, the door having been made specially for her so she didn't have to duck under it. She was curious as to what that other soul was like, but she had to admit that watching the blonde talk to himself was amusing to say the least. Sitting down on her bed, she looked at the shinobi, who rolled her eyes and leaned against the wall. Yeah, he wants to eat the castle, he replied, rubbing his temples. Taking a deep breath, he decided that he probably should just rip the band-aid off and just ask her out on that date. Katakori said that maybe going on a date might make this whole thing easier. I remember seeing a beach nearby if you wanted to go down there for a bit, Naruto told her. If anything, he figured that Katakori was being reasonable with the suggestion given his loyalty to Big Mom. He had no intention of anything happening, but it was better than hanging around some of these people. People with devil fruits aren't exactly able to swim in the ocean, she reminded him. I mean, you could dip your legs in, as long as your whole body isn't submerged you should be fine, Naruto countered as he mentally kicked himself for forgetting that devil fruits couldn't swim. Seriously, what kind of power limited your ability to swim? Sure, Smoothie replied, figuring that if Katakori came up with the plan it must be for the best. Obviously she knew that her fiancé wasn't a fan of the situation. Had practically ran away the other day the moment she left him alone. Apparently one of her sisters had come and further irritated him. That explains why I have the next few days off. We can go today, she said, walking over to her closet and pulling out a swimsuit. Whole cake beach. Arriving at the beach, Naruto instantly noticed that the sand's color was slightly off. It even felt wrong. Running his hand through it, he realized that it wasn't sand, but rather brown sugar and sprinkles. Sugar Beach's huh? He commented, not knowing how to feel about it. This whole island is a sugar rush waiting to happen, Kurama stated, licking his lips slightly at the thought of devouring the cake-themed island. Shut up, Naruto responded in his head with an annoyed look spreading over his face. Standing up he took his shirt off, leaving him in a pair of orange swimming trunks that they had acquired. Smoothie chuckled as it seemed that having two souls might not be all it's cracked up to be. She had changed into a black bikini with laces connecting the two sides of her bikini. She couldn't help but wonder how it had happened. Was he born with two souls? He had mentioned before that it had been his friend. How did the other soul get trapped inside of you? She asked. Sitting down on a beach towel, Smoothie figured that if they were going to be forced into this situation, they might as well learn some things about each other. My dad sealed him inside of me when I was young. My friend was taken control of and was destroying my village, Naruto said casually. It didn't really give away much about Kurama and his history, but it wasn't an outright lie as Kurama had been under Obito's control when Minato sealed half of Kurama inside of him. Your father had the ability to seal souls? She asked. As far as she knew, only her mother should have the power to manipulate souls. He could seal basically anything, Naruto corrected as Minato's proficiency in Fuinjutsu was almost unmatched thanks to his mother's access to the Uzumaki clan's sealing techniques. Smoothed, nodding her head in understanding. So a sealing devil fruit, huh? I admit that could quite the terrifying power if it is capable of sealing away even souls. Why hasn't your father released your friend if he's calm now? She pressed. She had to admit that she was curious about the situation with the blonde. Looking down at the marzipan floor, Naruto let out a heavy sigh. My parents died fighting my friend. Sealing him away was his last act before his death, he answered honestly, not having the will to lie about such an important event in his life. His parents dying against Kurama had altered his life completely. He couldn't imagine what kind of life he would have lived if Minato and Kushina had survived that night. Kurama looked to the side of the cage as he felt guilty for killing his friend's parents. It wasn't your fault, Naruto reassured the large fox as he felt the sadness radiating from him. Sorry, I didn't mean to bring up bad memories, Smoothie sighed, feeling a bit awkward. It was good to know if they were going to be spending more time together, but she felt a bit bad for making him recount his parents' deaths. Standing up, it's fine, I moved past it to be honest, no point in holding on to the past, he said smiling lightly. He had forgiven almost everyone involved in their death. The only one he didn't forgive was Madara. It had been Madara who caused all that death and destruction, and even then he was just a tool for Black Zetsu and Kaguya. What about you? I've met your mom but not your dad, he asked, figuring that if he talked about his parents, Smoothie should as well. Never knew him, he was probably married to Mama for a few weeks. Got her pregnant then was exiled or killed, she mentioned without real care. She had never known her father and at her current age had no need to know him or his fate. I was raised by my younger siblings mainly, Smoothie added as her mom had been more focused on expanding her empire at the time than she was raising her kids. She could tell that Naruto wasn't particularly happy about that even without using haki. The frown on his face told her everything she needed to know. Is something wrong? It's just a bit weird hearing that, I guess, Naruto answered as he sat down in a marshmallow chair. I never knew my parents, so it's kinda jarring that your parents are alive and yet didn't really interact with you that much growing up, especially in regards to your father, he admitted. It reminded him of when Sakura complained about her parents before Obito used the limited Tsukuyomi to send them into a fake reality. Don't get me wrong, I love my mother, my family is the most important thing to me in the world, she claimed. It was one of the first lessons that Big Mom and her siblings taught her, that family was number one, nothing came before it and loyalty to your family was absolute. Their fathers on the other hand were outsiders, they weren't really part of family and thus that love for their family never extended to them. Does your mother feel that way? He asked pointedly. He had seen how Big Mom talked to her when Smoothie had questioned if she was being serious about the engagement. What kind of mother who loves their daughter tries to force them to marry someone? To him there seemed to be a gap in the loyalty and love that the children had for Big Mom and how much of those same feelings Big Mom had for them. She shows her love in her own ways, she responded, knowing that Big Mom was rather strange and illogical at times, possibly being on the verge of insanity. Right, Naruto responded, not really believing that, from what he had sensed, Big Mom was a selfish, self-serving bitch, but he couldn't say that or risk enraging the whole Charlotte family. So am I gonna be the same with you? Knock you up then get kicked out? He questioned, wondering if they were going through all this, just for the whole thing to be over once she got pregnant. That would make the situation much more insulting. Smoothie shook her head however. No, typically when one of my siblings are married, it's a more long term, but if the husband goes against Mama we'll side with her, she explained plainly. That's comforting I guess, Naruto muttered. Opening up a thermos, Smoothie poured out 2 cups of juice and handed one towards Naruto who looked at the drink with apprehension. Realizing why he seemed a bit grossed out she laughed. It's just fruit juice, I promise, she told him, getting him to take the drink from her. Thanks, he said, still feeling a bit iffy about the drink but deciding to not insult her by calling her a liar. Taking a sip, he had to admit that it was delicious, extremely so. Before I forget, she wants us to join her for a tea party to get to know you better. A suit will be dropped off for you soon to wear later today, she told him, remembering that her mother had planned to host a tea party for them, Katakori, and a few of their siblings. She made sure not to tell Naruto how devastating these parties were for the people who lived under Big Mom. Many often died as their crew tracked down rare and expensive ingredients without a care of the people who died or were killed. I am so thrilled, he remarked, clearly not overjoyed at the prospect of having to talk to the Yonko again. Naruto was certain that he could have gone his entire life not knowing who or what Big Mom was, and he would have been all the happier for it. Do you regret letting yourself be captured? Smoothie asked the blonde. Given how much he seemed to dislike her mother, she figured that he likely preferred never seeing her again. No, Naruto responded without missing a beat. Smoothie would admit being a little shocked by the declaration that despite having been put through so much by her family, that he didn't regret what he did. Why's that? I doubt it's my charming personality, Smoothie asked, earning a chortle from the Jinchuriki. Because then it would have ended far worse than this. Sure, I am irritated and I am sure as hell not happy being held here, engaged to a woman I don't even know, but tell me this, Smoothie, Naruto said, looking her dead in the eyes, would you have left us if I had just asked that you leave with nothing? He asked her, wondering what she would have done had he refused to go with her and instead tried to make her go home empty-handed. I would have refused, she answered honestly. If I left and returned here without the cookies or a prize, Mama would have flipped out. She would have likely gone on a rampage, Smoothie said, knowing that her mother was prone to fits of madness. She might have even tried to take some other life as well for her failure. Exactly, it was either I bit the bullet for both our crews, or we fought until only one remained, Naruto explained, and the worst part was that Smoothie didn't even know if she would be the one to sail away from that encounter. He had been able to block Big Mom's attack despite wearing sea stone. He had the potential to become one of the biggest monsters in the world, if he wasn't already one. You're a very selfless person, you know, Smoothie asked rhetorically. All his actions had painted a picture of someone who wanted to do his best for everyone, someone who, if they weren't labeled a criminal by the world, would likely be one of its brightest rays of light. It was awe-inspiring to an extent. Naruto smirked at her. I just want to see a peaceful world, one where there is no wars, no fighting, where everyone can live happily and understand one another, he told Smoothie honestly, getting a wide-eyed look from the long-legged pirate. And of those who stand in your way? She asked him. Well, I'll try and reason with them, and if not, well, punching my issues in the face has worked. The blonde replied with a shrug. I know I can't change everyone. I know that there are people whose ambitions won't be quelled by words alone. I know it won't happen overnight. It's going to take peace, especially with how disjointed this world is, Naruto told her, acknowledging the limitations of his power to change people. Thinking back to the Akatsuki, he knew that there were a lot of members that he would never be able to change for the better. Hidan came to mind. The man killed because of his religion. Nothing he said would change the mind of the zealot. So you want to become the king of the world? She asked, wondering if he wanted to take over the entire world in order to bring peace. However, Naruto simply shook his head. No, then it would just be me oppressing everyone. Ideally, each country or island would be able to exist in peace or as close to peace as possible, he answered, not feeling like taking over the world was the answer. Maybe in another world or another life he would have become a conqueror, playing the game for some throne to rule over the land, but that wasn't him. And what about pirates? Where would they fit in your piece? Naruto fell silent as he looked out to the water. I don't know, I guess it depends on what they are doing. I am not the biggest fan of people who steal from those weaker than them or hurt others for their own benefit, so ideally, there wouldn't be more pirates, he answered, knowing that it must have sounded insane to a pirate. So you'll become our enemy eventually, Smoothie concluded. Not necessarily, you guys could always retire. You have a whole kingdom to rule over, maybe retire to some chocolate and strawberry-themed mansion and live the rest of your life here, he suggested casually, not sure if he was joking or not. Sounds boring, but I guess it wouldn't be that bad, she commented as she wouldn't mind being able to live a life indulging in the spoils of their pirate fleet. They had enough gold saved up to live comfortably until they passed away, but their mother's ambitions laid beyond just living a life of luxury. They laid in conquest, in ruling the lands, and becoming the queen of the pirates to create her idea of a utopia. What about you? Do you have any dreams? He asked her. I want to see Mama become the pirate queen, and take care of my growing family, she answered back. However, this only earned a scowl from the blonde shinobi. She couldn't help but raise an eyebrow at the dark look on the mont's face at her answer. Is something the matter? She inquired. That's your mother's goal, I asked what yours was, he explained more pointedly. Smoothie fell silent for a moment before looking out at the ocean. I don't have one. My entire life, I've dedicated myself to my family, so my dream is to see it prosper, Smoothie told Naruto, who sighed as he stood up and walked towards the water. You know, it's alright to want to see your precious people go far, for them to reach their dreams, but that doesn't mean you should live without having your own personal dreams, Naruto replied in a matter-of-fact tone. Entering the ocean without caring if it should or shouldn't have drained his power or paralyzed him. Dragon had told him that typically devil fruit users could move until half their bodies are submerged in water, so as long as he kept himself above that, he would be fine. Smoothie sighed as she walked over to the water and sat down at the shore, letting some splash over her whenever the tides rose up. She could feel her body weakening each time the water moved over her before they receded and her powers returned. It had been ages since she felt so physically vulnerable, especially around someone else who wasn't part of her family. "I'll think about it," she said before being splashed in the face with water. You better, Naruto said pointedly. Smoothie smiled a bit. While she didn't love him, she figured that she could have been married off to someone far worse than him. At least he seemed to have a genuinely kind nature as opposed to some of the other people that married into their family that only appeared nice but on the inside were greedy bastards. Big Mom didn't care, however, she only cared of the value that their marriage would generate for her growing empire. All things considered, she found herself lucky in that regard. Overall, for a forced date, it wasn't the worst experience he's ever had. He could think of quite a few missions that had been significantly worse. Hell, she had been more pleasant than Sakura 90% of the time. As the two were making their way back up to the Whole Cake Chateau, they saw the side of the castle burst open as Big Mom seemed to jump out. Smoothie's eyes widened as she noticed that her mom had entered one of hunger-filled fits of madness. She landed down on one of the houses, tearing through it before grabbing a large piece of the chocolate roofing and biting into it greedily. We need to run, Smoothie yelled as she knew that trying to confront her mom while she was in this state was suicide. Even for the likes of her, the only thing that would be able to stop her was giving her the food she craved. Naruto looked at her shocked as she had fear smeared across her face. What the hell is happening? Why is she attacking her people? He asked, demanding an answer from the woman who had been made his fiancé. Looking over at Big Mom, he watched in horror as she devoured the rest of the house without caring about the people who lived there. Walls, floors, windows, TVs, couches, everything. She was eating everything. There is nothing we can do. When she's like this, only giving her what she wants will get her to calm down. Smoothie tried to explain while trying to move the blonde away from the scene. Seeing her hysteria, a golden glow coated his body before yanking his arm free from her. Smoothie took a moment to take in the brilliant golden orange flames that covered his body, the twin horns that stood up from his head made from his energy-coated hair. Gone were the oceans of blue that were his eyes. Now, they were a fierce orange-red with cross-shaped pupils with red markings around his eyes. It was different from the form he used before when he initially confronted her, but still she could see the similarities. I am not gonna just let her rampage and hurt all those people, Naruto growled, turning towards where Big Mom was and started to walk towards her. If you're too scared, then run. Hide, save yourself. But I am going to go do something, he declared as he didn't care if she was one of the Yonko or if her family would be watching. If they were too scared to stop someone who was actively hurting people, then he would step up. Smoothie didn't have a moment to reply as Naruto leapt off into battle. Sweet City. Naruto ran up the side of one of the buildings and watched as Big Mom picked up a large chunk of a cake building but grabbed a person along with it, but that didn't seem to deter her from trying to eat it. Damn it, he growled. Using Kurama's chakra, he thrusted his arm forward, growing several times larger until it was able to grasp the pinket's forearm in its grasp. Janking it back, he forced her to drop the cake in person. Beignets. Give me beignets, she yelled as she grabbed Naruto's chakra arm and swung him around in the air, throwing them towards a waffle cone building. Naruto flipped over and landed with his feet against the cone, using his chakra to stick to it. Glaring up at Big Mom, he saw that her attention was already leaving him in favor of more of the food-based buildings that made up the city. We need to get here out of the city, he said to himself as he put his hands together in a cross formation. Taju Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. Hundreds of plumes of smoke exploded around him, his massive chakra splitting up among them. The onlookers looked on in awe as the glowing blonde seemed to actually stand up to Big Mom. All right. Let's get her out of here, the original ordered to his army of clones. Yeah, they yelled as they rushed towards Linlin like a swarm of flames. Dozens of clones created Rasengans in hand as they moved around the woman, catching her attention. The maddened woman roared at the annoying glowing beings that stood in the way of her eating spree, swinging her arm at them but was stopped when multiple golden arms wrapped around her arm. Pulling it back, taking the opportunity, the clones with Rasengans pushed their attacks into her stomach, pushing her back as more golden arms wrapped around her other arm and neck. Pull! One shouted as all the Narutos pulled the monstrous woman. Without her sanity to keep her in control, she struggled with all her might against the binding of arms. Push! The one leading the clones using the Rasengan to push her out. With one massive pull, the clones lifted Big Mom off the ground and threw her into the air, launching her out past the city limits and into a cake-looking hill, breaking through it before drilling through the ground, leaving a large trench as she slid. The woman growled as he pushed herself back up and began to make her way back towards the city, smashing or eating anything in her way. Standing proud, Naruto took a moment to bask in the awe and applause of the citizens of Sweet City as he saved them from their ruler before looking off at where he threw Big Mom. She had landed several miles away, but she would likely be able to cross that quickly if left alone, help out anyone who needs it. Ill deal with Big Mom, Naruto ordered before rushing off towards the enraged woman who had already gotten up from being thrown so far. What are you doing? A voice said as a wall of goo moved in front of him, blocking him from advancing. In front of him Katakori arrived to stop the blonde from further attacking his mom. How dare you hurt mama? He growled, appalled that Naruto would go as far as attacking his mother despite her current state. We can handle this. Katakori yelled at the blonde as their chef had already been working on getting the beignets for his mother. And how long is that gonna take? Naruto asked, keeping an eye on Big Mom as she tore through her homies that stood in front of her as she made her way back towards the city. Around 10 minutes, we already sent someone to get them from another island, Katakori answered as his eyes glowed red. He had seen how the blonde had thrown Big Mom before. Not only that, but they had thrown her miles away and through a mountain. He knew better than to underestimate his sister's fiancé. This man was strong, extremely strong. His low bounty really betrayed just how dangerous he really was. In those 10 minutes how many people would have died while you guys sat back or ran away? Naruto asked, wondering what he thought about the deaths that would have been caused by her berserker state. Sacrifices must be made, Katakori responded callously. Like the rest of his family, he cared more about his mother and siblings than he did about the common people who lived on the island. For all intent and purposes they were expendable to him and his family. Naruto narrowed his eyes on the mochi man who just declared that he was willing to sacrifice all those people for his mother. Are you really so selfish that you would let so many die just to keep your monster of a mother happy? Naruto roared as he finally had enough of this family and their worship of their mother, of their willingness to throw people away just to sat her insane behavior. Yes, Katakori answered as he hardened his arms with haki, ready to fight the man his mother wanted to marry. Smoothie, now stand down, or I'll put you down, he threatened, the ground around them becoming soft and sticky. Think we can take him, Kurama? Naruto asked as he figured that the sweet commander wouldn't be a slouch. The nine-tailed fox smirked as he clapped his hands, ready to pump chakra into his host. Is that even a question, Naruto? He asked back, getting a smirk from the blonde who formed 6 Rasengans over his head. The two kicked into action, rushing towards one another as fast as they could. Naruto formed a claw with Kurama's chakra and wiped at the man who avoided the attack by turning his upper body into a white-colored goo that went under his claw. A blackened fist shot out from the material into Naruto's stomach, sending him back. Several chakra shot out from Naruto's back, each grabbing on of the Rasengans on his back as they shot towards Charlotte. His eyes glowing red, he weaved and dodged around the arms as they attempted to slam their Rasengans into him. As one came close to hitting his face, he changed the left side of his face into mochi to avoid it. He's fast, Naruto thought as he saw that Katakori was able to react to his attacks even in his Kurama cloak. But he doesn't hit that hard, Kurama commented as despite his speed, that punch hadn't been that strong compared to some of the attacks they had taken against Madara or Obito. Yeah, because you're not the one being punched, Naruto muttered before barely avoiding a punch from Katakori who extended his arm outward. The punch seemed to have been adjusted to which way he was going to dodge, but he was quick enough to move further away. Pay attention, he yelled as he felt a little insulted that Naruto seemed to be having a conversation while fighting him. Amadare Mochi. He called out as he slammed his hand on the ground. Several pillars of mochi shot out from the ground, into the air before coming down onto Naruto. Several arms came out to catch each one. The ground cratered under him from the pressure being put onto him from above. Opening his mouth, he rapidly started to gather red and blue chakra together into a large dark purple orb that shrunk to the size of a golf ball. Cho Mini Bijudama. He yelled as the ball fired off towards Katakori, who foresaw that the small orb would explode violently if it hit. Leaping out of the way, he was blown to the side by the shockwave when the ball traveled deep into the nearby woods and detonated. The explosion consumed a large area of the forest. The cries of several now vaporized homies rang out for a split second. Katakori wrapped his feet in mochi to keep himself grounded before avoiding a punch from Naruto. A fist came out from his chest to punch the blonde in the face but was caught by two of his additional arms. His eyes widened as he realized that he couldn't change the arm back and was stuck while held. Rasengan. Naruto roared, another of those blue orbs in hand being moved toward his chest. Naruto frowned as a hole opened up where his jutsu would have hit and pushed himself away from Katakori with a futon. Datappa. He's not using haki. Katakori thought to himself as he couldn't see the usual black coating that came when something was enhanced by one's will. Even when held directly by Naruto's energy, he couldn't feel any haki. How is he able to negate my devil fruit without haki? He asked himself as nothing about this man made sense. So many powers, how many abilities, so much power, how could one person do all this? I need to end this quickly. He decided on as he felt that if things got drawn out, Naruto might unveil some power far over what he could handle. Slamming his hands onto the ground, the entire area around them including the trees and hills turned white before rising up into massive tendrils that once again shot towards Naruto who jumped back, avoiding them as they flowed back into the white ground before coming back up again and again. However, despite not being hit to the seemingly endless streams of mochi, Katakori's goal was accomplished, pushing Naruto further away. Around Naruto, the mochi once again rose up like a massive circular wave around him that extended several dozen meters into the air before collapsing on top of him. Pushing his hand deeper down, he forced the mochi to continue to wrap around him as he used as much as he could pull from to entrap his sister's fiancé. Letting out a sight, he pulled his hand back as he had tightened the mochi as much as he could around Naruto. He doubted that even his mother would have been able to break out. Katakori. He heard behind him as Smoothie and most of his siblings came out from the city to join him. They all looked like they were ready for battle. The group looked up at the massive pile of mochi that Katakori had used to trap Naruto. We saw the explosion and figured that maybe he was too much. Sorry we doubted you, a shirtless man with orange hair said with a smile as he felt a bit bad that they assumed Katakori would need help against Naruto. Katakori smiled under his scarf at the level of care his family had for him before his eyes widened. Turning around, he couldn't help but feel some level of fear as his mochi started to shake. Impossible, he said before a massive orange arm exploded from the side of the mochi mountain, slamming into the ground. The limb was absolutely titanic, far larger than even Big Mom's arms. What the hell? Smoothie said as she drew her sword, moving up next to Katakori as a second arm tore its way out from the mochi. She couldn't believe that the day that had started out with them having a nice day talking by the beach and getting to know one another had now ended with him transformed into a giant fox about to fight her whole family. What the fuck is he? Cracker asked, moving up besides his two fellow sweet commanders in his biscuit armor. The rest of the Charlotte family got into battle positions as the massive pile of mochi started to rise up. Katakori slammed his palms into the white ground, trying to compress the mochi once again while adding more. However, that did nothing to stop whatever was trying to emerge from inside. They all watched as the mochi ripped open in the front, revealing two large glowing eyes in the darkness. With one final roar, the mountain exploded, force scattered mochi everywhere for miles. The weaker members of the family were blown back by the roar only to be caught by Katakori's mochi and lowered to safety. An earth-shaking roar rippled all throughout Toto land as they saw just what had emerged from Naruto's cage. 9 tails, each the size of a mountain, connected to an equally large fox-like entity made of the same energy that coated Naruto before. Floating in its head was Naruto himself, looking down neutrally at the Charlotte family. Smoothie, I think you should have just left him with the Revolutionary Army, a clown-looking member of the family said, fearing that facing a monster that towered over even their mother would be the end for them all. Charlotte's. A man in yellow with an extremely long tongue shouted as he created an arrow out of some pink material, we will lose here. He yelled as he was prepared to put his life on the line for his mother. Looking up at the monster before them, he couldn't help but feel its raw killing intent. It's a desire to kill them. Mama, don't you think this is a bit much for training? Big Mom said as she walked up cheerfully onto the battlefield. In her hand was a massive platter filled with the beignets she was craving so much. After her daughter had gotten them to her, she spotted the massive fox emerging from mochi and figured that they might have wanted to test Naruto's strength. Mama, this man. The jellybean-looking girl started before Smoothie covered her mouth. I think Mama's right. We've taken this too far, Smoothie said, deciding that the most efficient way to end this with all of their lives was to just go with what their mom thought was happening. It was clear that Naruto was willing to go all out against them now, turning into that thing. If they fought him, even with their mother here, she feared some of her siblings would die in the crossfire. Smoothie, what are you? Cracker began to berate but was cut off by Katakori who put a hand on his shoulder. Mama, my tea party is tomorrow. You should all go get cleaned and rest. I won't have anyone smelling bad during it, she said, throwing another beignet into her mouth as she skipped back towards Sweet City with a wide smile on her face. Naruto glared down at the family before sighing and lowering himself back down to the ground as his Kurama avatar receded back into him. I guess this is over, he said, walking after Big Mom to the whole cake chateau. Naruto could feel the anger and fear directed towards him from the Charlotte children. He had rattled more than a few of them with what he did today, but he didn't regret it at all. We have this tea party, then we leave Kurama, Naruto said as he made up his mind about getting out of this place. See outside Toto Land, an armada of ships were sailing towards the sweet-themed country, each bearing the emblem of the Marines. At the head ship, a man wearing a white vice admiral's coat stood looking out at the center island. His eyes narrowed under his sunglasses as he lit his cigarette. His dark hair came down to his shoulders, his chest exposed showing his kanji tattoo. The man brought up a small snail. This is Aramaki, we're coming up Big Mom's territory, he said casually to whoever was on the other side of the Den Mushi. Do not attack, send an envoy and try to retrieve Uzumaki Naruto without conflict, Sengoku's voice said from the other side, much to the Mon's agitation. The fleet admiral didn't want to have a war with one of the Yonkos over one revolutionary, but for whatever reason the Gorosei had demanded that they bring him in. To stand against the gods. We should bring them all to justice, he yelled, believing that they should arrest all of them, not just try and get Naruto. Vice Admiral Aramaki, do not get into a fight with the Big Mom pirates. We cannot afford this right now. I'll have you jailed if you start a war, Sengoku yelled back at the man who sighed.
All right, I got it, he relented. I am coming for you, Golden Devil.
Naruto sighed as he looked at himself in a suit. He couldn't wait to just leave this god-forsaken island. After the events of the previous day, he had gotten nothing but glares and looks of fear from the residents of the Cake Castle. Not that he really cared about what they thought of him. He had saved a lot of people from Big Mom's rampage. That was all that mattered as far as he was concerned. He had to admit to himself, if Big Mom had attacked him instead of believing it all to just be a very intense training session, he would have likely wiped them all out. It was blood he didn't really want on his hands. Are you ready? Smoothie asked, dressed more formally compared to her usual outfit. Despite being in the same room as him, she had the same cold look on her face towards him as the rest of her family. She wouldn't deny that she was ready to fight with her life on the line for her mother. She didn't know how she would be able to forgive him for what he did. Yeah, Naruto replied as he turned towards the long-legged woman. Let's get this shit out of the way, he said, just wanting to get it over with. Smoothie narrowed her eyes on him. You should be honored that Mama invited you to one of her tea parties, Naruto, she stated, feeling like he was disrespecting her family by acting so negatively towards her mother. Why should I be honored to have tea with her? The fear you showed when she went on a rampage. That is not a reaction that one has towards someone they love. But the fact that you all were willing to let her kill and destroy to avoid confronting her or harming her. I just thought some of you were better than that, Naruto said, crossing his arms as he decided to no longer hide his thoughts on the situation. I've had to tolerate being stuck in this castle, watching almost every second of the day. And it's becoming more and more clear that your mother isn't selfish, she's goddamn insane, he growled at her. And so what if she is? Smoothie snapped back. She might not be able to control herself sometimes, and she might do some things people might see as evil, but in the end she's my mama. She yelled at him, her temper rising as Naruto didn't seem to back down. And, so because she birthed you that means you need to be okay with everything she does? Or are you just complicit in it all? I can feel it, Smoothie. I can feel how much you and all your siblings fear her. I saw how she reacted when you questioned her. Is that how someone who loves you would react? Would someone who loves you force you into a marriage? Naruto asked as he stormed towards her until he was looking up at her with a fierce glare. Your mother doesn't care about you, he told her pointedly. Smoothie looked a bit hurt by how plainly Naruto was saying that despite all she did for her mom, for her family, she didn't care about her. Part of her knew that Big Mom would have killed her if she irritated her too much, or if she got in the way of her while she was in the middle of one of her fits.
That doesn't mean I can't love my family, she countered through gritted teeth.
Is she really part of your family? She didn't even raise you herself from what you told me, he said back to her, getting her to take a step back. She treats you guys like pawns, and that's all you'll ever be to her, Smoothie. That's all that your family will ever be to her, Naruto told her before walking past her out of the room. Smoothie clenched her fist as she knew that if things continue as they were, Naruto might eventually snap on them again. She could still remember him standing in that massive avatar of energy. Why did you stop? You clearly hate Mama, and you don't seem to like the majority of us. You had no issue trying to blast away Katakori during your fight, so why did you just stop? She asked him, wondering why he didn't carry out his attack on Big Mom yesterday. Naruto stopped and looked back at her. I stopped because you made an effort to avoid fighting. You showed that you preferred just ending that fiasco instead of trying to continue and risk the lives of your siblings. You lied to Big Mom in order to avoid her attacking me. Naruto told her honestly. Had she not stepped in and lied to her mother, he would have likely brought the entire crew down. He was not afraid of going all out against them if needed by drawing on the full power of the six-path sage mode. I stopped you, she asked, almost confused by the response. Smoothie, I do believe that you're a pretty good person overall. I think you're a bit fucked up for how you just juice your crewmates at times, but aside from that you're smart, and you care about the people you love. It's pretty admirable. I just can't tolerate Big Mom and some of your family, like seriously fuck flamp. He admitted to her, surprising her that he actually thought well of her. However, she couldn't help but laugh a bit at the animosity towards her younger sister specifically. Thanks, I guess, the white-haired woman said as the two walked down the hallway towards where Big Mom wanted to have her picnic. Not going all out against us, she said, knowing that there was more power that Naruto was hiding. The form he was in when he initially met her looked different and had those black orbs that he didn't use against Katakori, and his energy seemed more controlled. She assumed that was likely his strongest stage that she knew of. Don't mention it, he said as they arrived at the door for the garden where Big Mom was waiting. I hope you know, I don't intend to marry you anytime soon. I am not ready for something like that. There are still things I need to get through first before I even really start considering dating, let alone a marriage. It has very little to do with you, Naruto told her, feeling that she at least had a right to know why he was against marrying her without openly saying the real reason. Sorry, I am actually from another reality and I am still processing the fact that I am stuck away from my home where my friends may or may not still be trapped inside a giant tree that's slowly sucking away their life. It even sounds stupid in my head, the golden-haired shinobi thought to himself. Dragon had made sure to tell him to never reveal his origins in this world unless he trusted that person with his life. He didn't trust Smoothie that much yet. To be honest, I wouldn't mind it given some of the people my siblings had to marry, she admitted to him. Naruto at least seemed like a good, honest person. Sure, he was antagonistic towards her family at the moment, but he had some admittedly good reasons for it. Being around him was rather eye-opening at times. He was so brash and straightforward, but he was also someone who cared about others. Gee, thanks, Naruto responded, giving her a deadpan look. I am so happy to know that your mother married off some of your siblings to scumbags. Perhaps that's an indicator of how much she actually cares for you all, he pointed out to her. Stop that, not here, she responded through her teeth as she saw that one of her siblings was approaching. Last thing she needed was Naruto insulting Big Mom and getting back to her and restarting the fight from the previous day. Hey Pudding, Smoothie greeted the girl with light brown hair and brown eyes. She seemed a few years younger than Naruto, around 12 or 13 with bangs covering her forehead. Hey sis, Pudding said before looking at the blonde man beside her with a hint of fear. While she had not been present for the confrontation between her family and him yesterday, she had seen his monstrous power from the whole cake chateau when he changed into a large glowing fox. Her siblings had told her that he had attacked their mama and then fought Katakori to the point that their older brother needed help, and Naruto. She greeted but saw that he already had his eyes narrowed on her, causing her to flinch. Why is he looking at me like that? No way, does he know? How did Smoothie tell him? She thought to herself as she felt that maybe he was judging her based on her hidden eye that she kept covered with her bangs. However, what had caught Naruto's attention wasn't anything physical about her, but rather the darkness she gave off. Hate, anger, sadness, guilt, and self-doubt. They radiated off her like a dark cloud, a swirling mix of negativity. Hey there, how's your day going? He asked her, figuring that he might as well not add to the darkness inside of her. It's going fine, Pudding replied, a bit on edge from how pleasant he sounded now, yet how firm his stare was a few moments ago. She also wasn't exactly used to people asking how her day was going, so it was a bit of a strange moment for her. How's yours? Good to hear, mine could be a bit better, but I am sure it'll end up good, he said to her before looking back at Smoothie, who decided to speak up. We should keep moving or we'll be late, the white-haired woman informed him. She didn't want to see her mother's reaction if they dared to show up late to her tea party. The Charlotte matriarch took her events extremely seriously, and anything that impaired her enjoyment of them would usually end up dead. Naruto grunted at the news before looking back at Pudding. Well, it was a pleasure to meet you, he said before the two left, leaving Pudding staring at their backs. Pudding was unused to the kindness she felt when Naruto spoke to her, which left her a bit dazed. However, she couldn't deny that she was a little happy when he took on her mother. Big Mom hadn't been the nicest to her. Her hand reached up to her forehead as she remembered when Big Mom told her to grow her bangs out to hide her third eye that she found repulsive. Tea room. Naruto slouched into his chair, bringing a cup of tea up to his mouth and took a sip of the admittedly delicious tea. However, looking at Big Mom, he couldn't help but dislike her despite how joyous she seemed at the moment. The servants brought them dozens of treats for them to enjoy, each with a variety of flavors. It was a rather small one compared to what Smoothie was used to, the only participants being herself, Naruto, and Big Mom herself. Looking at her fiancé, she was happy that her mother was too busy stuffing her face to notice. Putting down her emptied plate, Lin looked at what she was determined to make her son-in-law. "So Naruto, where are you from?" she asked, wondering where the blonde came from. She had seen him about to fight all three of her sweet commanders plus some other officers from her crew. She had been rather shocked when she witnessed his giant fox form. It only solidified her intention to add him to her family.
"I am from Wano," Naruto replied, recalling that Dragon mentioned that shinobi were a thing in that country. While it was closed off to the world, he could just lie that he managed to slip through by sheer luck.
"Oh, you're from Kaido's territory, huh?" Big Mom commented as she knew that her fellow Yonko was in control of the secluded land, using it as almost a base of operations. He must be getting rusty if he lets someone slip out. "Mama." She laughed as she figured that Naruto had been able to escape under Kaido's nose. While they were ex-crewmates, she loved it when he messed up. "Yeah, haha," Naruto said, grabbing a cookie and munching on it. "So I was thinking the wedding could be next week. I already have the perfect cake in mind." Big Mom told them, wanting to make things official as quickly as possible. She would have done it today, but she needed to send her crew out to gather the ingredients to make it perfect. Her children were already out scouring the world looking for the perfect chocolate for the fountain and the best tarts to serve. "So soon, huh?" Naruto muttered as he looked over at Smoothie, who had been rather silent throughout the whole tea party. "Of course, I want my grandchildren as soon as possible," Big Mom told him, laughing as she fully intended for them to consummate their marriage on that night. Naruto took a deep breath as he decided that it was now or never to let the monstrous woman know that he wasn't going to be forced into a marriage. Before he could talk though, the doors swung and in came Big Mom's eldest child Perospero. "What is the meaning of this interruption?" she yelled, causing the man to recoil in fear that his mother would take his soul for intruding on her beloved tea parties. "Let's hear him out, mother-in-law," he choked out as he could tell that the man wouldn't have risked coming in like that without an important reason.
Lin's anger turned to joy as she heard Naruto refer to her as his mother-in-law. To her it was confirmation that she was right and that the blonde was a great match for her daughter. "Well, Perospero, what is it?" she demanded, but in a less intimidating tone compared to before.
"Marine's mama. They are asking for Naruto to come with them under the orders of the Gorosei," he told her. The Marines had made it clear to him when they arrived that it was either they had over Naruto or it would result in a conflict. If the Gorosei had given them the order to get Naruto, he was certain that they would go even as far as ordering a buster call on Todo land. Of course, he wanted to get rid of the blonde. The man had attacked their mama, even if she didn't remember it. "Well, if it's a fight they want, then it's a fight they'll get," Big Mom growled as a large cloud and a cartoonish sun came to her. "This is our chance," Kurama yelled at Naruto. "Right." Naruto thought as he couldn't help but be happy to be a man wanted by the world government at the moment. "No, if it's me they want then I'll go with them," he declared, getting up from his chair much to Big Mom's surprise. Even Smoothie was looking at him with widened eyes at the declaration. Deciding to take things to the next level, he grabbed Smoothie's hand and looked up at her. "I can't bear the thought of you all risking your lives for me, so to keep my family safe, I'll give myself up, but I'll be back for you, Smoothie," he declared, stomaching the lie and being careful not to promise something he didn't really want to keep.
"What? Why would I allow that when we can beat them?" Big Mom questioned.
Smoothie for her part knew that this was all an act, that he was trying to use the Marines as an excuse to leave the island, and to be fair, she couldn't help but think it was a great idea. They avoided a fight. Her mom still thought he was going to marry her, and she wouldn't have to worry about being married off to someone else under the pretense that Naruto would one day return for her. "Mama, let him go," she said, juicing herself to push out tears. "I know he'll be back one day."
Big Mom herself seemed to be tearing up. "Mama, such young love," she said, wiping her tears away.
"This is goodbye for now," Naruto said as he walked towards Perospero with a wide smile. "Let me show you all how dedicated I am to protecting this family," the blonde declared, his cheeks slightly green from the urge to throw up while declaring himself a member of the family. Docs. Naruto was now face to face with the vice admiral tasked with arresting him. Next to the blonde was Smoothie, who had asked to be the one to see him off. "Hey Smoothie, for all it's worth, it was nice meeting you," Naruto said, deciding to end things amicably. However, instead Smoothie placed a kiss on his cheek. "You're still my fiancé, idiot, even if you leave. Besides, I do intend to see you again," she told him, smirking at his reddened cheeks. She wouldn't deny that she had become fond of the blonde over the time they got to know each other. "Maybe then, you'll be more open to a relationship," Smoothie said before jumping off the ship onto the dock, looking back one last time before walking away. Alone with the Marines, Naruto let out a massive sigh of relief. Thank you so much, dude. I thought I was actually stuck there, Naruto said, looking at one of the lower-ranking Marines holding a pair of seastone cuffs. Part of him was tired of seeing them, but he was getting a free ride out of Toto land. That was a low price to pay. Yo, just put those on and bring me some food. I've been eating nothing but cake for like 3 weeks, he ordered. You don't give orders here, devil, Aramaki yelled out, taking the cuffs and slapping them onto Naruto, who looked only happy. But I guess even trash knows when to follow the will of the gods, he said, pulling Naruto along down to a cell. Just get me the hell off this island, Naruto said as he sat down and watched as Toto land seemed to grow smaller and smaller. I'll give it a day, he said before closing his eyes and laying down on the prison bed provided for him, just happy to be out of that cake-themed hellhole for now. Wake up, prisoner, one of the Marines yelled, banging on the seastone bars to wake the blonde up and feed him his breakfast. Naruto groaned as he sat up and glared at the Marine who had woken him up. While he was happy to be away from Big Mom, he couldn't help but miss Smoothie's bed. While sharing it with a stranger wasn't ideal, no one could deny that Big Mom had gotten the most marshmallow soft mattresses in the world, that were likely actual marshmallows. Well, I guess I am breaking out now, Naruto told the man as he shattered the seastone cuffs before tearing the cell door from its hinges, scaring the hell out of the Marine who had seemed so arrogant just moments before. Rolling his neck, he picked up the plain ham and cheese sandwich he had been provided as the Marine ran out screaming that the prisoner had escaped. Eating the small meal, he couldn't help but savor the fact that it was salt instead of pure sugar. Tilting his head, he avoided a spike of wood that shot out from the ground. Not this shit again, Kurama groaned in irritation as several more branches of wood shot out towards Naruto, who entered his Kurama chakra mode to better avoid the attacks before jumping up and breaking through the ceiling onto the top of the ship, where he saw several tendrils of wood converging onto him. Wood, huh? Naruto muttered, several arms holding Rasengans shooting out from his back to destroy the encroaching wood. Turning, he caught the fist of the man who was doing it all, Vice Admiral Aramaki, who had a pissed-off look on his face. Oh, it's you, huh? He said with a small smile on his face as he felt that the man was significantly weaker than Katakori was at the moment. Those who go against the gods need to learn their place, he growled, only for a fist to slam into his stomach, launching him back like a rocket into the ship. The dark-haired man spat out blood as he felt that the hit had done a lot of damage to his stomach that his devil fruit was trying to fix, but was having a hard time doing so. And who are the gods? Naruto asked as he was surrounded by Marines who brought their rifles up aimed at him. Their bullets fell to the ground as they're unloaded onto him, but were unable to pierce through Kurama's chakra. The celestial dragons are the gods of this world, Aramaki responded as he created a massive wave of trees that rolled over the ship towards the Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi, not caring if he crushed his own men in the process. They were all expendable in the name of the celestial dragons. Naruto's eyes widened at the blatant disregard for life that Aramaki showed. He was just like the Charlottes in the way they regarded Big Mom. Bastard. You're just like them, Naruto yelled as he moved through multiple hand signs. Yoden, Shikugaryugen no Jutsu. He yelled, expelling blobs of magma that solidified into burning boulders that easily burned through the trees the devil fruit user created. The Vice Admiral's eyes widened as he saw that Naruto could also call on and use lava just like Admiral Akainu could. That's impossible, he yelled as he leapt out of the way in order to avoid being caught in the swarm of magma balls, growing a platform to help push him away from the attack before a flower grew out of his back and started to spin. Fire spread over the ship as the magma made Aramaki's trees catch on fire, the man glaring down at the glowing blonde as flames surrounded him. You really are the devil, he growled as the epithet he had been given reigned through in his mind as someone wholly devoted to the celestial dragons, the golden devil, Uzumaki Naruto, the demon that stood against the world government and the gods that ruled it. I'll destroy you. The man roared as he extended his arms towards Naruto, them splitting into dozens of wooden tendrils with razor-sharp tips. I am the devil, Naruto asked as he changed into his six-paths sage mode. Sorry, but I think you're talking about your precious leaders, he said before vanishing from the path of the tendrils in a must of speed. A heavy kick slammed against the Marine's back, blasting him down back into the ship and through it until he slammed into the bottom floor. Aramaki grunted as he pushed himself up to see Naruto looking down at him before he turned away to leave. The tattooed man growled as he felt that half his body couldn't move, likely paralyzed by the damage Naruto had done to him with just one strike. Mustering the rest of his might, he shot one last root-like tendril at Naruto's back, but the blonde turned and caught it with ease. I got you, he declared as he made the root merge into the blonde's skin. What the? Naruto asked as he felt his energy being drained through the vine he caught, glaring back at Aramaki who was laughing at him, draining him like a leech. However, Naruto smirked as he knew what happened when those who didn't know how to control natural energy tried to absorb it. Well, if you want my power, here then. Take as much as you want. Naruto yelled as he forced his senjutsu chakra through the wood. Instantly it began to bulge. Bubbles filled with bright orange energy began to grow down towards the marine, whose eyes widened under his sunglasses at the power running through the vine. He attempted to pull it back only for it to be unable to disconnect from the seamless bottomless well of power. The growth eventually reached him where his body seemed to naturally absorb it, converting it into mass as his entire body seemed to start bloating like a balloon, growing larger and larger. He felt his face buffing up. His skin screamed in agony as it stretched to try and keep up with his growing body. He felt like he was going to explode, like if he kept draining the blonde head grow until he popped. Please, stop, he mustered out as his neck and cheeks threatened to cover his mouth. Naruto said as he let go of the vine, letting the last of the energy travel down into Aramaki, who now looked like he had gained several hundreds if not thousands of pounds as his devil fruit converted the very life-potent energy from Naruto into pure fat instead of turning him to stone. Naruto figured that it was like when he attacked the white Zetsu copies and they turned into trees, only because the vice admiral was human, the energy was stored as fat instead. The once muscular man now looked like a mountain of lard. For his size, Naruto figured he was significantly fatter than Big Mom, and so much so that he would likely be unable to move until he lost it all somehow. You're welcome for the meal, Naruto said as he started to float into the air, before shooting off in a random direction as the other marine ships turned to help the one that was lit ablaze. That was risky, Naruto, Kurama warned, as there would have been no way of knowing how people of this world would have reacted to his power. Well, it paid off, Naruto replied as he closed his eyes and spread his senses outward to see where he could head to next, possibly even try and locate Dragon again.
Room of Authority. The Gorosei had met once again to talk about an issue that had been plaguing them once again. It had been a week since Naruto had escaped from marine custody after turning himself in to avoid a conflict with Big Mom, something they were a little appreciative of. That however didn't negate the fact that less than a day later he broke out, destroyed their ship and likely incapacitated one of their vice admiral. After retrieving the mountain of flesh that had become Aramaki, they had been forced to decommission him due to the immense weight forced upon him by Uzumaki Naruto. However, they had learned that he had broken out of sea stone cuffs and then used lava-based attacks, something that should have been impossible due to Admiral Akainu having that ability.
Really? The original devil fruit? That's ridiculous.
One of the elders commented. They had been theorizing how the blonde revolutionary could use so many abilities. One theory was that he had eaten a devil fruit that allowed him to access all of the powers of other fruits, one that they originally called the Akuma no Mi. However, given that he kept a humanoid appearance when he was coated in that golden energy of his, they believed that it was all a Hito no Mi, like Sengoku's devil fruit and the mythical Hito no Mi model, Nika. Thus was born the Hito no Mi model. Akuma theory, one where Naruto had eaten a theoretical devil fruit that was the incarnation of the devil itself, the progenitor to all other devil fruits.
It may be, but it explains how he has the ability to use the powers of devil fruits that have already been eaten, a mustached man said, believing that for now the theory was the most believable to them. It might even explain how he was able to break out of sea stone, as if it's the original devil fruit, it might lack the same weakness as standard fruits, he pointed out. Still, it's a bit unnerving that such a powerful devil fruit would exist in this world, the bald one with glasses said, rubbing his chin. Should the public find out, it would cause a panic as different forces tried to claim that power for themselves, he stated, knowing that many pirate crews would do anything to get the power of every fruit under their command. Golden Devil Uzumaki Naruto, one with long white hair and an equally white beard and mustache, muttered, his bounty should be increased, we need him contained before he grows too powerful, he might even be too powerful already, he said, knowing that if someone became too strong they could destroy the balance of power in the world, especially if they worked under Dragon, the most dangerous man in the world. Monkey D, Dragon and Uzumaki Naruto, the revolutionary army is starting to become quite the problem, one with a cane said, fearing that the two might succeed in destroying the world government if left unchecked. We shall put his bounty at 1 billion berry for now, using his attack on a vice admiral and his connections to both the Big Mom pirates and the revolutionary army as reasoning for the massive increase. Any more than that and we risk the public starting to question why someone who was so unknown until late got such attention, the sole blonde man spoke. Agreed. Thanks for watch here.